Hey, Andrew.
Yes, Stephen?
You know how we romanticize the days of going out to our local video store and sifting through endless amounts of movies, searching for our favorite films, and maybe even finding some hidden gems?
Oh, yes, I know it all too well. That used to be my favorite thing to do. Unfortunately, everything is online now.
Well, what if I told you that there was a place online where you could get some of them same thrills as going to the video store?
Are you talking about Orbit DVD?
I knew you knew what I was talking about. Orbit DVD is located in Asheville, North Carolina, and online with OrbitDVD.com, they bring you everything your physical media heart desires.
Yeah, they have an awesome website that stays up to date with the latest releases from all of your favorite boutique labels as well as studio releases. Not only do they carry American labels such as Criterion Collection, Severin Films, Vinegar Syndrome, and Warner Archive, but they get routine shipments on imports from companies such as 88 Films, Arrow Video, Imprint, and so much more.
And with the option to sell or trade your used copies for cash or store credit, they really bring that video store vibe to you. So go to OrbitDVD.com and stock up on your Blu-rays.
And tell them Chasing Labels sent you.
Hello there, welcome to another episode of Chasing Labels. I'm your host, Stephen Billings, and with me as always is stupid Red Sox fan, Andrew Cabral. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. Thank you for such a warm, welcoming opening. That was just fantastic.
Well, as you can tell, baseball season started, and Andrew's a
Yeah,
Red Sox
Steven
fan.
gets very
I'm
antsy when it comes to baseball season.
I get pissed off because I'm my favorite team is the Orioles, and we're in the same division as Red Sox, and Orioles just always seemingly just can't fucking win. I'm not
That's
going to
also
talk.
true.
I'm not going to talk about my woes in
Sports.
baseball.
I'll be honest, Steven is not a big sports fan, but when it comes to baseball,
Oh,
you can't stop him.
I
You
love
can't stop him.
baseball. Loved baseball my whole life.
It is the national pastime, as
Some people,
that's what they
not
say.
anymore. No, not anymore.
I know. Yeah, that's what I mean. It's kind of like an old saying that people just keep saying, but I don't think it's
People laugh at it
100%
now.
true anymore.
Now football's the national pastime now.
Yeah, I guess
Seems
that's
like
accurate.
it now. Seems like we've
If you're just
forgotten
going by
baseball.
money and popularity.
Exactly. Yeah. But we are here on spine number 93.
Yes, it is
93.
indeed.
So, So in this episode, we have another guest here. And on this episode, we have the film critic, historian. He's a teacher. He's done so many different things in the world of film criticism. And also, of course, bonus features. He's done many commentaries, and that is Adrian Martin. He is Australian, but I believe he lives in Spain. So, but we had a really great discussion with him. It goes pretty lengthy. We go about 2 hours, getting into many different subjects. We talk about, of course, his career and his beginnings, like we always do with all our guests. But we also get into some kind of like heavy subjects about film, criticism of film criticism, analysis of film, and that's important.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
it's his thing,
Analysis of film is interesting because of the difference in perspectives.
Sure.
Also, the evolution of film criticism has gone, has evolved so much over the last, 20 to 30, 40 years because of the invention of the internet, of social
Yeah.
media, of so many different voices saying so many different things. I brought up, YouTube and all of that when it came to film fans talking about movies and when it comes to Twitter and all those kinds of things. So film criticism as kind of a journalistic thing has changed incredibly so
Most definitely.
over the last little while. So we get into all kinds of subjects, and you get, like Steven said, it is a lengthy video, but also a lengthy interview as well. So check that out on our YouTube channel or listen to it here wherever you can do it or want to do it.
It's very, very. You're stumbling like I usually stumble.
Yeah, I'm stumbling.
Yeah.
It's not going well right now.
But
So, before
yeah.
I stumble anymore, we should probably
Yeah, well, I'm going to introduce
play
the
the
guy.
interview.
Yeah, so here we go. Relax your ears, get you a drink, and here is the interview with film critic Adrian Martin. So, joining us this week, we have coming all the way from Spain. I think this is the first person we've had from Spain, and that is film critic, historian, lecturer, teacher. He's done tons of things through his career, his long career, and that is Adrian Martin. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks for the invitation to be on this show. I've been listening to it recently. Terrific work that you both do.
Well, thank you, man.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you.
Anybody that we hear that says that they've listened to our stuff that works in the industry of what we like to talk about, we're just it's humbling. We
I
appreciate
just
any
think
yeah.
I just think anybody
Well,
whoever who
anybody,
takes the time.
of course, anybody that listens to us is fantastic. But when because we take this seriously and we like to talk and we like to really shine a light on this passion we have for these physical media and the extras that go along with it. The fact that you guys are taking notice and starting to come to us or just be really happy to come on it's fantastic. So we appreciate you guys taking the time to hear us ramble with you guys. But Adrian, so in general, how's it going? How you feeling? How you doing?
I'm feeling pretty good, actually. There's always good films from the present or the past to discover. There's always things that I want to write about or speak about, to explore. So yeah, no, it's a good time.
Yeah, I get this impression that you're literally just living cinema all the time. You're you know, looking in, doing my research on you, you seem to just breathe it. You just literally day to day, just trying to find new things to write, trying to new things to watch. Yeah, it's kind of, and that's kind of my outlook on film. If I had the time, I wish I
Mm,
had more time, but just wanting to discover things. That was the key word of what you just said. I just love the discovery of
Mm,
film and cinema, and just hoping to always search for something I've never watched before. And
mm.
that's, I'm assuming that's something that still drives you, is just that that search of something that can surprise you.
Absolutely. I mean, my daily regime is basically to watch a film a day or some episodes of a TV series every day, and I usually write something every day too. So they're the two main activities. I mean, I'm a freelance film critic. That's basically what I am, and so it's a mixture of writing things, of sometimes being invited to give talks, and doing audio commentaries on DVDs and Blu-rays. That's essentially what I make my my meager living out of. But it's the freelance life that I've chosen for myself because it's what I enjoy. It's what motivates me, and it's sort of what keeps me alive. Keeps my spirit alive. Is to constantly discover films, and I'm always on the search for things I haven't seen, for genres I haven't yet explored, for parts of the world that I haven't really looked much at the production. Filmmakers I've never heard of before. It's important to it reminds me of the great days of the old VHS video shops where you would just walk in and you would just grab 10 boxes because they kind of looked interesting to you. The cover art would look interesting. This is
Yeah,
something that's a bit lost, I think, these days in the era of streaming. Where you get these algorithmic recommendations. If you liked this romantic comedy, you will like that romantic comedy.
yeah,
mm,
But in the old VHS video shop days, it was like, oh, what's that? A horror movie? What's that? An art film? You would just wander, and
yeah,
you would take a chance. You would take a chance on things you'd never heard of before. Nobody was saying to you, "I recommend that you watch that." Perhaps a friend might say that, and you would listen to them. But it wasn't an impersonal machine telling you you must watch that. You will like that. That is your taste. Because for me, the whole thing is, you know, each one of us should try to expand our taste a bit. I've often said taste is a prison, or it can be a prison. People who say, "Oh, I'm only into one kind of film," and or a very limited restriction of types of film. Whereas I think try to surprise yourself. You'll by chance you'll see something and you'll think, well, that's intriguing. I've never seen anything like that before. Now I want to see more of that. So that's really always been my guiding principle with viewing and also with writing.
Yeah, and with writing, I think I hear this from a lot of writers. It is important to write every day because it not
Mm,
only does it keep you, um, you know, keep you from getting rusty when it comes to just probably just normal things like grammar and things like it's just doing it the right way, but also just keeps you motivated, keeps you in a process of always thinking of different ways of how to get your points across, and
mm,
I think something that will probably be kind of a theme of this discussion is just how the ever changing way that people consume things is a way that um, can also can change the way you present your thoughts.
mm,
The way that people consume media these days changes the way you need to explain yourself so that it's more accessible for the people that are watching. I think when it comes to extra features with we have the audio commentary, but you also have like visual essays that are kind of we've described them as almost like a condensed version of a commentary.
mm,
It takes snapshots of the movie and you can write an essay form that kind of condenses down the thoughts of what a commentary might provide.
mm,
um, so, for some people, that's a better way to consume that kind of information because it's shorter. They don't have to watch the whole
Yeah.
movie. And that's everybody's taste. If they want to
Yeah.
sit down and watch a whole movie and hear somebody talk over it, that's some people love that. Some people
Yeah.
don't have the time for
Yeah,
that.
people's attention spans tend to get shorter and shorter as
Yeah,
time goes on. The generations kind of get shorter and
and
shorter.
that's the change that's happened. I think
Yeah,
with
cultural
some,
change,
you know,
societal change, all that kind of stuff.
mm,
You mentioned kind of the exploration or diversifying one's palette when it comes to different you know sections of cinema. Really, I guess we'll just do what our usual thing that we do, Stephen, is go back to the beginning. Where did that kind
mm,
of
mm.
that original like incarnation of your love of cinema start, and then obviously grow from there?
Mm. Well, I had a sort of an indirect path to loving movies, which was that as a kid, and I'm talking like 9, 10 years old, I was really into comics, and in fact Marvel comics. But this is the great era of Marvel comics in the
yeah,
late '60s, and so I was like a comics fiend, and that got me onto science fiction novels. And around the age of 11, 12, I was an obsessive reader of science fiction, and like I'd read 3 to 5 novels a week, and I was also in like a group of friends who would swap books, right? Trade books. So each week you'd read 3 books and you'd trade your 3 books, and you'd get 3 new ones, right? So I was into this whole scene of reading science fiction. And I was also hanging out at a shop in Melbourne, this is Australia, and a famous shop called Space Age Books, uh, a place where years later I bought a lot of my film books because they were also into film in Space Age Books as well as science fiction. But the key thing that I discovered there, just through being an obsessive science fiction freak, was that I discovered the world of fanzines, printed fanzines at that time, of course. This is the 70s. And I started particularly reading a fanzine called SF Commentary, speculative fiction, science fiction commentary. And I really had no idea how highbrow this magazine was. I mean, the people who were writing for it, and it was just as it were an amateur production that some guy did in his living room, with his typewriter and his Roneo stencils and whatever. But the people who were writing for this were, for instance, Stanislav Lem, the author of Solaris, the book of Solaris. Lem, a very famous Australian novelist named George Turner, was writing for it. And they were writing about Philip K. Dick and J.G. Ballard and all these kinds of writers. And this was the key. They kept talking about films. It's like every SF commentator had to also have their list of recommended films. And the films were Solaris, Alphaville by Jean-Luc Godard, 2001: A Space Odyssey, of course, by Kubrick. La Jetée by Chris Marker. Now, as an obsessive sort of kid, I had to see these films, right?
Yeah.
I had no clue what they were talking about. La Jetée, what the hell is this? A film of still photographs all about time travel? What the hell is this film? Who's Chris Marker? You know, and so, I would literally be bugging my dad. I'm a little kid and I'm bugging my dad. You got to take me to this screening at a university to see La Jetée, and
I,
Alfred.
I, I I'm hoping that my daughter comes to me and says, "You want to see that art film?" That
Yeah,
please,
take me to 2001.
please.
So, and also you've got to imagine. It's hard to imagine this now, but in the mid 70s in Australia, you could also see some of these films on commercial television. I mean, I saw Alphaville by Godard at midnight on a commercial TV station. I also saw films by Visconti, by Mitsuguchi, by Chabrol, by Truffaut, by Godard. All of these things were on TV, commercial TV, dubbed, of course, sometimes a bit censored. They were all on TV at midnight, often with a crazy host who was just sort of selling car tyres or something like that, in between
Yeah.
20-minute blocks of these masterpieces of art cinema. So as a kid, I had incredible access to a lot of things. And and so the more I got into watching these kinds of films, suddenly I left science fiction behind. I've virtually almost never read a science fiction novel since my very early teens, and I went completely over to film. And I became obsessed with reading coffee table books and the kind of thing, the 50 films you must see, whatever there was at that time, and I would make lists of films. I got Andrew Sarris's famous book, The American Cinema, which is just full of lists of directors and films, and I would be writing my own lists and ticking films off, because also on television, on Australian television, in the afternoon this time, not at midnight, you could see uh, an incredible range of Hollywood classics from the 1930s, the 1940s, the 1950s. I mean, this is where I saw films by Billy Wilder, Preston Sturges, Samuel Fuller, Nicholas Ray, John Ford, Howard Hawks, etc., etc. This was all on television. And so TV was just an incredible thing back then. It's no longer that now in Australia. I think it's pretty much the same case all over the world.
Yeah.
But that was another part of sort of what was available to me in those days. So I just became an obsessive cinephile, in the sense of just someone who loves films, who loves to discover films. But also, I love to read about films, and this started very early for me. I'd just go to the local library. There would be 20 years of Sight and Sound magazine on the shelves. There would be Film Comment magazine in the local news agency. I mean, I could buy Sight and Sound and Film Comment just in a local, magazine and newspaper shop. This is another thing that has disappeared from our culture. It's not so easy to get that sort of intro into in-depth film criticism. So at the age of now 13, 14, I'm watching, Preston Sturges and Goddard, and I'm reading Robin Wood's film criticism. I'm looking at all kinds of stuff. I'm reading books. Books were cheap then, it seems to me, in my memory. And one could buy books on Samuel Fuller. One could buy books about particularly American cinema. There was lots of stuff around to read. There was Victor Perkins's book, Film as Film. That was like a $1 paperback that I bought, when I was 13 years old. And so it was this mixture of reading, of exploring, of endless watching of everything. And because just another factor of the Melbourne Australian culture to mention is that in those days, even commercial film exhibitors and distributors used to show a lot of art movies, and not just in art cinemas, not just in special cinemas in special posh suburbs, right? I mean that, on the weekend in the centre of the city of Melbourne, you could go to an Ingmar Bergman festival, This is what I did when I was 13, 14 years old. I would go to these festivals where I would see 8 Ingmar Bergman films for some ridiculously low price because you'd get one, discount ticket as a young kid. They used to have special prices for school kids to discover art movies. Once again, something that has really disappeared from our culture at this level of the major companies, the major film distributors and exhibitors being this open. But that was because some of the people who started those companies were themselves originally cinephiles in their university days and so on and so forth. And they hadn't disowned all of that yet. They were still loving the art of cinema. They were still loving Fellini, Ingmar Bergman, Luis Buñuel. So these films, films like Buñuel's Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie had a commercial release in Melbourne. It was a kind of popular film. I remember my older brother, university student, basically telling me, "Oh, gee, you got to see this groovy film, Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie. You'll laugh your head off. It's surreal. It's crazy,
Yeah.
So that was a part, a very normal part of people's culture then. These days, things get to be more divided up, and we
Mm.
we associate Buñuel with, oh, that's on the Criterion label and all this kind
Yeah.
of stuff. But when these things are more open access across the board, it's a healthier situation, I think.
I think that I think that I mean we could argue that the excess is better than it's ever been.
That's true.
It's a matter, I think, of just I think people's I think film cultures, people's what they like to watch and the time that they have to watch things, that they've become a lot more limited for them. It's about people's time. People
Yeah,
don't have time to watch everything or explore like we would like them to, so they only
Right,
pick the things that are kind of in their face, which is the things that get advertised the most, get the most money behind them.
right.
Our mainstream cinema. What I would love to see one day would be almost like a sectoring off. If there's any kind of sectoring off, a sectoring off of when films get released. Maybe we release all the big movies in one sector of the year, and then
Yeah.
no other. And then maybe like a 2 to 3 months only put like independent films and art house movies out in the theaters, and let them have their own life by
In
themselves.
in a
You
way
know,
that does happen now, with
kind
quote
of, but not
unquote,
really.
at least here, award season, which is typically the fall here. There's this race, this gamut at the end of the year for all of these lower independent films, these, I guess, high art, if you want to call it that, or the films that made the rounds at film festivals earlier in the year, all get released pretty much within a release window of September to December.
mm,
Most of them towards the
But
later part of that
but but
time
but
frame.
but they don't all make it to the theater,
And
and
they don't, and
they're
if they do, limited runs. We're
well,
talking
limited,
limited.
and there's tons of blockbusters that come out in them
Oh,
times
yeah,
that
that's
take the
that I
attention,
didn't
you
I didn't
know?
say they were getting released to a lot of people, I was just saying they were getting released. And
That's what I'm saying.
yeah.
That's what I want. I want to take all the big blockbusters away
Mm,
from a certain section and let just the independent films have the forefront. Because that's
mm.
the
it's
problem, is that they're not getting the attention because they're shrouded in a big damn shadow of this big
very
movie
true.
that's had millions of dollars put into it as a marketing machine to
I do not
you know.
disagree with you, but it's like the state of the film industry as a whole, like, doesn't allow for that
It won't
because it's
allow it,
all
and
run
I'm
by
saying this is a
money.
fantasy discussion.
Yeah, it is very much a
Yeah,
fantasy world.
yeah.
Um,
But I do wanna go back to something you said about
yeah, well,
Marvel, um, being that you said you grew up as a comic fan. What's your interest in Marvel films? This big boom over the last 12 years, 15 years
20
of
years,
I
really.
mean,
Mm,
yeah,
mm.
but it really hit, 2008 when that Iron Man movie came out, is really when the Marvel boom happened, and so what is where's your place with all that?
Yeah, it's look. I mean, I've got nothing per se against the Marvel movies or the Marvel universe in any media, but I myself sort of, because I had a period where I was a reviewer on a newspaper. I wasn't part of the newspaper staff. I was still a freelancer, but I worked for 11 years for the Melbourne newspaper, The Age, and And what was good about that job was that, basically I saw everything. Anything I wanted to see that was in current release, I saw it and I wrote about it. And for me, that was very good discipline, a very good experience. In that I thought, I'm going to try to find something interesting to say about anything that I see, even if it's not my taste or not my kind of film. It's what I was saying before, that the prison of taste. It was a really good way to get out of the prison of taste. I always know when people are not going to be very good in the job of film reviewers, because 2 weeks into it, they're saying, "Oh, I have to watch so much crap. I have to watch a horror movie, I have to watch a teenage movie, I have to watch an action movie." And I said, "That's what you're here for.
Yeah.
You're here to watch all these films if you are a paid film reviewer, right? And you better do something with that. You better do something with that experience. Try to find something
Look at it
interesting."
as an opportunity,
Yeah,
to expand on your craft as a writer, even if you don't like something. It's to write about. I'm sure writing something that you don't like is more challenging than writing something you do like. I would assume.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, I had this sort of personal rule, is that I had to have one idea in every review that I wrote. Preferably three ideas would be an ideal, but at least one idea. Not just to say this film's good or this film's bad or this film's crap, this film's masterpiece, but to actually say something about the film or about the context of the film, the culture that the film's coming into, some trend in movies, something interesting that we can compare, we can connect a whole lot of films. This was my interest as a film reviewer. So to get back to the Marvel question, so now I was this newspaper film reviewer between 1995 and 2006. So there was a whole bunch of superhero blockbusters starting to emerge, and that I was seeing and reviewing in that time. I can't personally say that they were the most exciting films for me. I always thought there was something um, formulaic, which is not in itself a problem. A lot of films use formulas in very good, very inventive, interesting ways, but formulaic in a slightly empty way. Uh, I wasn't really. I wasn't really getting, you could say, the mythological richness that I thought I experienced as a little kid when I was reading Silver Surfer and the Fantastic Four and all this kind of stuff. When I was watching these later film versions, I was thinking, there's some poetic mythological richness that is not there for me.
Mm,
There's too much emphasis on narrative, purely on storytelling. Storytelling
mhm.
is a very important, great thing, of course, but that there has to be more than just storytelling in a film, and there has to be more than just an imaginary world. We hear a lot these days about world building in video games,
Yeah.
in Marvel universe and all the rest of it. But the world's got to be interesting, that's
Mm,
made. It's got to have some poetic depth or suggestiveness, or So often I found that films that were kind of on the edge of the whole superhero fantasy thing, like a film like The Phantom from around 1995. Remember, I was quite excited by that because it wasn't a super seamless, perfect story. It had strange digressions. It's like it had little holes where the spectator's fantasy could enter.
Yeah.
There were spaces where you could dream yourself. The film wasn't just giving you the dream. It wasn't just giving you the dream of another world or the dream of a superpower or whatever it is. And for instance, to take an example, I've always loved, since the '80s, the work of Sam Raimi. I've thought, very, very, very clever, very interesting, very skilled director. But as his work got more into the superhero thing, it became less for me. You know,
Mhm.
some of the original zaniness, some of the original, really clever, inventive stuff that was in, the first Evil Dead movies and stuff like that, it's no longer there. A sense of outrageousness had disappeared a bit from some of Sam Raimi's later work. Every now and then he tries to get back to his roots, as it were. He tries to return, and I applaud him for doing that. For trying to bring back a lot of some of what originally inspired him.
Yeah, I think with Raimi, it's I'm sure there's executives that are pushing to change things and make things more
mm.
palatable for a wider audience. But mean, thing is people love Army of Darkness. I mean, that's a
Oh,
cult
yeah.
film, but it's become kind of past a cult film. So obviously, what he does, people like. So you have to just sometimes let filmmakers do their thing. But and then that became the debacle of Spider-Man 4 that never ended up happening. Well, I mean, Spider-Man 3 was a debacle on
Right.
its own,
But I think,
but
it's the industry is just so vastly complex that it could take an original, entity as like Sam Raimi and then kind of filter him down to the point
Yeah.
where he gets so frustrated that he just a production literally falls apart. Literally falls apart.
But
And
but also these stories are definitely not necessarily the same type of movies that he was telling before,
right.
unless I mean, did he do the movie Darkman? Was that him?
It,
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
yes.
yeah,
Sam
so
Raimi.
that I mean, in a way, you could look at that movie as a film that was a precursor to what he would eventually do with superhero films, like, in
Right.
a way,
I would even I would even argue that directors, filmmakers, can change their you know,
Oh, of course.
can change their abilities
They
to
change,
direct different
they
films.
change over
You know what I
time,
mean?
yeah.
Not every director's kind of, well, some stay in their specific lane and just kind of ride that wave throughout their careers, and some deviate. Some success, some not so success, and some are initially not successes. Then later on, you end up realizing, hey, that film was actually much better than we thought. Which I guess kind of wedges us into the whole film criticism thing. And just, when did that kind of start for you? Was that part of your early writings?
It was, in the sense that when I was, already 13, 14 years old, just for myself, I was filling books and books. In fact, I still have them, notebooks, full of myself doing reviews. And some of these are very funny for me to read now because it's pure mimicry. I'm mimicking what I'm reading in Sight and Sound magazine, or I'm mimicking Andrew Sarris, or Raymond Dernyat, or whoever it was I was reading at that moment. I'm sort of speaking in their voice, imagining what they would say about the latest film the Robert Altman film that I'd just seen or something. But that was one way to begin writing. I think writing often begins by mimicry. You start to find your own voice, you copy other voices, and then slowly you arrive at your own voice. Um, and that's exactly what I did. So I was writing very intensely, I must say, from the age of 13, 14. And then when I was 19, I started to appear in actual magazines.
Mm,
There was a famous Australian magazine, Cinema Papers, and 1979 is the first time that I appeared in print there. And from that point on, I've written very, very steadily, prolifically, I think we can say, in all sorts of different ways too, because I believe to be a writer, you should try all the different forms. Writing for newspapers, I did reviews that were, 50 words long, but I've also done, 20,000 word chapters for books. I've done very long studies of one film. I've done short reviews. I've written out talks that I give. I've tried to write in all sorts of different ways, different forms, different modes, because it's important to diversify your address. Like, you always think about who you're talking to and who you're trying to reach, and I've always tried to reach a wide audience, uh, but in a way that's accessible, that gives them access to ideas that perhaps they haven't encountered elsewhere so far in their life. It's funny. I was listening the other day to the excellent interview you did with Alexandra Helen Nicholas, and she said she left the university because she didn't want to talk to 60-year-old professors. She wanted to talk to 16-year-olds, budding
Yeah.
film cinephiles.
mhm,
Well, I can go one better because I am a 63-year-old professor who
mhm,
Yeah.
talks to
mhm.
16-year-olds.
Right.
I also want to reach 16-year-olds, because I think of myself at that age, and how some things were easy for me to get access to. There were these cheap books about film, there were things on television, but there were things that were not of access to me. I couldn't just walk into a university and start listening to someone talking about film, in some higher level, more theoretical level. That wasn't accessible to me then. But if me, on an audio commentary, if I can sort of be the bridge between these different worlds, of the film fan and the professor, I'm happy to do that. It's all a question about giving the bridges, providing the bridges, and giving people some point of entry into thinking about films and exploring films further.
I think in a way, I think for the, I guess more, um, not I wouldn't even say older film fans, but people who have been film fans, whether you've been it your whole life or you've been it several years, whatever the case may be. I think you almost have not a duty, not like a calling, but I feel like you're almost inclined to do that naturally
Mm,
because you just like movies and you like cinema so much that you want to share it,
mm,
specifically share it with people that maybe younger than you or people that are not in the know like you. And then you maybe, because you always get, then you get people coming to you for recommendations and people coming to you for whatever the case may be, and you kind of have to train your mind into delivering the information to them
mm.
where it sounds interesting, because if it
Well, not
doesn't, yeah,
not even just interesting, but that you're not talking you're not and I think this is kind of where we when we go back to the conversation we had with Alexandra, we don't want to be teaching the future just about what we think. Like, if I'm a teacher, I'm not teaching them what I think is the best things that they should be
Mm,
watching. We got to let
mm,
them have. There needs to be some flexibility there. We should definitely be teaching them about the plot, the points, the things that were very important parts in history, but we also need to leave a little open for them to discover things on their own, and
mm,
get, so point them in a direction, but then let them kind of have their own kind of like free range, because I think
yeah,
that
I would
that's
I would
that's
even
the when we talk about 60s something year olds and it being
right.
some of them can be very stuffy. Some of them can
Well,
have
yeah,
their
I mean,
minds
not
made
every
up and not want to explore things that they've maybe never explored before and change their opinions.
I'd say,
But yeah,
having been in like formal education for a long time, you run into different types of
yeah,
professors, teachers, academics, and whatnot, and not everyone approaches material the same way or delivers it to people the same way. I've had professors who literally read their notes from a yellow like uh, pad and paper, basically just notes that they've been using for years, and you can tell because the pages are all wrinkled and they're just flipping them over. And then I've had very interactive professors who were able to deliver the information in interesting ways, but also make it interactive on our level as students. And I guess, Adrian, since you're here and you have done teaching, has there been a certain, and you've probably seen the attention spans of students change. You've seen just the way students absorb learning change. Has that been kind of a fascinating journey? Because I always hear stories specifically now of like, um, you know, schools closing because of or academic reasons or funding and all this kind of stuff, and then test scores being low. In the United States, is a huge education problem that seems to be never ending and never fixable.
mm.
So being in kind of academia for a long time, have you seen kind of the ebbs and flows of the way students absorb information?
Mm. It's in my life. I've really only had two relatively brief periods of university teaching, of university work. When I was in my 20s, I did that for a while before I even had a degree. In fact,
which is crazy.
yeah, yeah, it was.
I
That's the 70s. Like, it could
yeah.
never happen again. There was still a sort of a hippie moment in education, which was a very great moment, I think, in education around the world, sort of radical pedagogy, where it was like, hey, you know something, come in and teach it.
You
Who
know, you know
cares
you're
about
you're almost
credentials?
like Jack Black in School of Rock. You're
Exactly,
In a
exactly.
super
way.
fan of film gets to teach a class.
Yeah.
Like
I would even say like a Robin Williams in,
Dead
Dead
Poet
Poets
Society.
Society,
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah, I go
ingratiating
to the
young
School of
minds.
Rock,
Okay.
which
I
I
tried
like
to go a
that.
little more academic there, but I got you.
But so I did that in my 20s, and then much later in my 50s, I was invited by a university, basically because I still had no degree, and I was invited to sort of get a degree, a PhD, by presenting my past work, like the first 30 years of my work, by condensing it and sort of putting it together into a thesis, and that's how I ended up becoming a professor, from being someone with not a degree to being a professor, which is not a bad way to do it, and I was very lucky that it happened for me. And so then it was, it was in near the end of the 2000s that I started teaching again, basically 2007 through to 2014, and that was my second period of teaching. So I definitely see the differences between the 80s and that period in the 21st century, the difference between those two centuries. And in the 80s, it was pretty easy to encourage students to read things. To read a lot of articles, essays. Sometimes whole books, and this is all much harder now. It's what I hear from all of my friends who are involved in university teaching is it's so hard to get kids to do reading. Any kind of serious, stick with it reading is really hard, and I mean it's just part of the whole kind of incredible speeded up culture that you were talking about before, Stephen. This sort of speeded up, accelerated, where we're all in our own groove of consumption of, whether it's TikTok and Wikipedia or whatever the heck it is, and whatever online thing we're into that we get our information from. And that's harder. And also, the attention span to watch films is this is a whole thing that has changed a lot. In the 80s, there was no problem with arranging screenings of 2 hours, of 3 hours, of 4 hours. Students would stick with it because back in those days we had 16mm projectors. We were projecting films in a special designed theatre room in the university, or we were hiring a cinema around the corner, and so we'd actually be watching these films in prints. However, the moment that it all changed over to first using video, VHS, and then later DVD and Blu-ray in universities and schools, this was a crisis because, of course, kids say, "Why should I watch a DVD at the university when I can watch it at home? I can watch it on my laptop. I can watch it on my phone."
Mm.
And now things are kind of falling out of alignment a bit because we're not having, as a group, as an interactive group of learning, we're not having that experience of watching the film together, of immediately talking about the film, of me introducing the film before it starts. All of this kind of communal experience has disappeared, and the student may or may not watch it, all of it, on the phone. So this is a crisis for film teaching, and some film teachers have just had to go with it and say, "Okay, I recommend that you watch Citizen Kane by next week. You can watch it here, there, and everywhere, and on your phone, and we'll talk about it when we get together." And that can still work to some extent. And in some ways, of course, students are getting a much wider access to a whole lot of things. I remember there was a very definite day where I realised something had changed when this was around 2009, 2010, and I was in a classroom speaking, and I started talking about what was then a rare film. I think it might have been Wanda by Barbara Loden. This was, of course, long before it came out on Criterion. It was Barbara Loden's Wanda, which I had seen on like a French DVD release or something. And I was telling the class about this film and about how rare the film is. And if you have a chance to see it somewhere in the world, you've got to take that chance. You've got to see this film. And one of the students walked out of the room. And I thought, how rude. He walked out of the room and he came back 5 minutes later and he handed me a USB, and the USB had Wanda on it. He had downloaded it from, some special source.
Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah.
He just downloaded it and gave it to me, and he said, "Well, it's not that inaccessible anymore."
That is a fascinating time capsule thing because that type of stuff was happening a lot in the 2000s. If you were a young person growing up, 90s, 2000s, when the internet first hit,
Yeah.
it was kind of like a wild, wild west type of thing because you didn't quite know how to use the internet. And then as time progressed, the internet just ended up being used for progressively everything up until it literally runs our lives to this day to a certain extent. And you can find access to literally everything if you look hard enough. I mean, any film or nearly any film, like you were saying, could be found. That was 2009.
Mm,
Nowadays, it's even easier because with the kind of the technology the way it is, as soon as it's on disc or on a digital form in any way, that thing is plopped on the internet somewhere
yeah.
and it's accessed by anyone. So the access to it is it takes away a little bit of the magic from it. It really does. The
Mm.
mystique of cinema, the enigma of it all, where you had to,
It's a mindset thing.
yeah,
I
it
mean,
takes
like,
a little
sorry,
bit
go
of
ahead.
it. Well, I
Yeah.
was just
Well,
saying, it just takes away from that.
I was gonna say, like, we talk about like 60-something-year-olds being closed mind can be, suppressing of that, but also today I feel like young people can almost be the same thing. They have grown up with a certain lifestyle, and they think a certain lifestyle is the way that you should consume things.
Mm,
You should consume things on your it's okay to consume things on your phone. It's okay to consume things on your laptop. And now we're fighting the fight of trying to say, no, 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 wait a second. I get it. This is the new shiny thing, and it's accessible and it's nice, but I'm telling you the better experience overall is going to be on the in the theater
Mm.
on a big screen,
yeah,
or,
it's the
or.
the rapid changing of technology. The technology in the last 20-25 years has
Yeah.
rapidly advanced to the point where things that came out 5 to 10 years ago are considered ancient by now.
Yes.
I mean, have you ever
Yeah.
seen the YouTube videos of young people today, like, you hand them an iPod and they don't know what it is,
Yeah.
but in the 2000s,
Yeah.
an iPod was revolutionary.
Mm.
I mean, they just had it, like, I think, an anniversary of, like, one of the first iPods coming out, and that was, like, 15, 16 years ago. And but from then to now, just the newer generation doesn't know what that is because it just
Yeah.
doesn't they didn't grow up with it, they never used it, it's not talked about because we moved on to the next thing. And then with home media entertainment, we've kind of uh, you know, Blu-rays, DVDs, all that stuff is still around, but people have now moved on to the digital world, the streaming of it all, and
Mm.
whatnot. And Adrian, I would like to get your take on it since you've kind of seen really the evolution of home media and consumption of movies from
Mm.
theatrical exhibition all the way up through home video, and then in the digital realm now.
Mm.
What is your take on digital media, just in general?
Well, I mean, I'm all for it at one level, and of course, I love the theatrical experience of being in a good, film theatre and projection of print, and good sound system and so on. I mean, that is a great experience. I mean, as a really little kid, my dad took me off to see the Sergio Leone westerns, and they were big commercial releases, of course, the Clint Eastwood films. And I had no idea who Sergio Leone was, when I was a kid. But those films are just such powerful experiences of image and sound, and landscape and the human face, and action and poetry. They're just fantastic. They're imprinted on my mind from those theatrical experiences. But as I said, I also learned a lot about cinema from television, from black and white television. So I'm not the kind of person who says I'm not a purist at that level. I don't say we should only have the theatrical experience, 35 mil, whatever, 70 mil, and because I discovered a lot on television. These days, I watch an awful lot on my laptop. That seems to me quite an okay form for a whole lot of a range of things. And uh, and the whole world of streaming and so on has, on the one hand, as you've both been saying, it creates incredible new access. That anything you want to see is out there basically somewhere. Um, but often, I think the missing factor is you need you need a spark of curiosity. I once heard film criticism and film teaching defined as an incitement to desire. Like, you've got to give someone the spark to desire, to want to see something, perhaps to see something they've never seen before. I'll give you a contemporary example. The film EO by Jerzy Skolimowski. Absolutely great film, and I'm sure it's great to see it on a big screen in a theatre. That must be amazing to see that film in that way. Now, Skolimowski is a director that I absolutely worship. I think he's a great, great filmmaker. And in the case of Skolimowski, I would like to incite people not only to watch EO, which is great, but go back to the start. Go back to the 60s and watch Walkover by Skolimowski. Watch Le Départ, which is one of my 10 favourite films in the Sight and Sound canon poll. Watch Deep End, extraordinary film that he made in Britain. Watch Moonlighting that he made I mean, there are so many great films, different films in different countries in different styles that Skolimowski has made. They all have this incredible energy, incredible sort of vision, incredible visceral power, physicality, sensuality. I mean, that's in a case where, I want to incite people to go back in Skolimowski's career, not just to see the one that was nominated for an Academy Award, blah, 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 EO, but to go back, and this is true of many filmmakers, let's try to build the bridge between now and then, the present and the past. This is one of the most important things I think that film critics can do, is to create curiosity, incite desire to go back into the films of the past and see them anew, see them in relation to current films. That's very important.
Yeah, I think one of the hardest things, and I even get this from my own wife, you know, um, is just getting people to correlate, like that like not necessarily the quality of what you're watching, but like the aesthetics of a film, being that films back then were black and white, and the film technology wasn't as advanced as it is now, and it's like just on that level, some people don't even want to discover things because they're like, oh, that just looks like it's an old timey movie. They don't act, their acting's not as good as the acting now. It's like,
Mm.
well, that was a different time. A lot of stage actors became film actors. The writing was different then. The way that
Yeah,
films
the language
were
was
put together,
different.
the language was different. It was not, and that's what should be interesting. But for a lot of people, it becomes the turnoff because it's not what they are used to. And and that's what I say when it comes to the younger generation, is that they get obsessed with. And this is in a way every generation's problem.
Mm.
We think that the time that we lived in, is the best time, and so like
We're very
kids
egotistical.
yeah, kids these days, they look at the life they're living in, and they look at all the new entertainment coming out, and they're like, this is the best time. I'm living in the best time that there is to live. And to an extent, they're right. To another extent, they're not understanding what they're missing out on because they won't go back
And you can't quite explain that.
yeah,
You can tell them that, growing up in a specific time frame, whether it be the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever the decade may be, you can tell them how it was, you can describe it to them, but you
it's an
can't
experience that you
you
have to
can't
let them.
yeah,
It's
you
an
can't
experience.
recreate the experience of it because it's one, it's unique to you, and two, it's unique just to that generation in and of itself. So you can't really I don't fault them for that. But I think when it comes to introducing them to older films or just classic films, you got to find the right ones that are really grab them. Because I think there's a lot of films that we keep talking about here on not only on the podcast but just I guess in general is that some films have staying power for a very long time. Some films are incredibly contemporary because they're still dealing with social and thematic issues that were prevalent back then that still exist today when it comes to just culture, when it comes to maybe something like civil rights or something like gender equality or something like LGBTQ rights and all that kind of stuff. All this stuff keeps our existing within our society, and the film is often a reflection of things that are going on. And if that's what's going on then, and it's still going on now, people can relate to that.
Mm,
I mean, it's really I think that's what really kind of keeps cinema going is its relevancy keeps getting more and more relevant. In many ways, I think a lot of things that were science fiction or just outlandish fiction at one point have become reality by this point,
mm,
to the point where it's not so ridiculous anymore to see people in spaceships flying in space because that occurs, or something even more outlandish of like even political films that we've seen in the past where some candidate is propped up as a phony puppet candidate and it's like, yeah, that happens now. You know, I'm
It's always
thinking of
happened.
maybe A Face in the Crowd by
Yeah,
Eli Kazan just pops in my
Mm,
head,
yeah.
yeah.
and it's just like, yeah, that happens all the time.
Mm,
It's kind of interesting the staying power of cinema.
mm. I
If you
mean,
allow it. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
I think that's one of the great things that I experienced when I was a teacher is that you can you can see this happen. That for instance, I give you a great example: the films of Ernst Lubitsch. The comedies of Ernst Lubitsch. You show To Be or Not to Be, or Designed for Living, or Trouble in Paradise to a group of young students, and most of them are completely knocked out. Like that, it completely confuses their idea that you were mentioning, Stephen, of yes, these old time films with the rickety acting and the dialogue, and they watch a Lubitsch film, and it's so modern. It's so modern, and it's so modern on the issues that you're talking about, Andrew: sex, gender, morality, ethics, relationships. I mean, it's all there in Designed for Living by Lubitsch. The film is still a radical vision of how people relate to each other. Personally, intimately, sexually, and every other way. Uh, you know, Fritz Lang, you mentioned, civil rights issues. You show them a Fritz Lang movie, like Fury or Scarlet Street, or, one of the great masterpieces of Fritz Lang. And there's nothing old timey about it. I mean, of course, these are issues we're still dealing with, and these particular artists like Lang and Lubitsch, two of the greatest of all filmmakers, they had insight and foresight into the way these things were going to play out. They had a vision of history, and they also had a vision of the future. Fritz Lang was an incredibly futuristic thinking guy. I mean, of course, he made Metropolis, and we see his visions of the future. But even on the questions of the newspaper industry, the television industry, these things that he was putting into his last American films in the mid 50s, he already had a vision of how important television would be within mass culture, within popular culture. So, of course, these things, when we see them now, we're struck by them. We can see them in a new way, because we've lived some more history. We can relate it with that.
Mm.
This is all part of the adventure, I think, of really studying and loving films.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, I think when it comes to, for those of you who are interested on kind of the history of the production side of things, a lot of the things that were done decades upon decades ago were then emulated by a lot of modern day uh, um, filmmakers. I always go back to the new Hollywood in the 1970s when it comes to American cinema. All of those people that that are still working today: Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese, Francis Ford Coppola, that whole generation of people got their influence and got their sense of cinema through the past and kind
Mm,
of brought it into their present and are continuing it to today. And then the filmmakers and generations after them learned from them. So it's like a domino effect. It's like, the past, then the next generation, and then so on and so forth. And you see that ripple effect happen all the way to today. To we just talked about the modern Marvel blockbusters. That type of scope when it comes to epic filmmaking goes all the way back to things like um the Cecil B. DeMille epics, Ten Commandments,
I
things
mean,
like that.
even westerns. I
Yeah, I
mean,
was even saying
mm,
westerns,
sure.
the samurai films of Akira Kurosawa. It was Akira
Mm,
Kurosawa's birthday, I think yesterday, of this filming. That'll put people like when we actually filmed it. I'll give you a sense, but it's like kind of made the Western epic for Japanese cinema, and
mm,
then the culture here took what he did and brought it back, and then redid it again for
mm,
future generations because they took what he took from us here. It just kind of shows just like the evolution of cinema kind of feeds upon itself to
yeah,
grow and grow and grow.
mm,
And it kind of never ends because every generation, I think, learns from the past
mm,
and then kind of adapts it into the present and then takes it into the future.
mm. I absolutely agree with you, Andrew. No, no question. And and for me, the issue then becomes, that there's a sometimes the canon, as it's called, the sort of the list of the great films gets too small. It gets too restricted, and if what filmmakers are feeding off are, you know, definitely great films. Citizen Kane, Vertigo, Seven Samurai, you know, The Godfather. I mean, all good films. But if the list gets restricted to that again and again and again, if we're getting this very reduced canon, you know, that's why, for instance, I thought it was great when Chantal Ackerman's Jeanne Dielman topped the Sight and Sound poll. It wasn't the result of a conspiracy. It wasn't anything rigged. It was a pure expression of a revolt, and it was great. You know, uh, Chantal Ackerman is one of my favourite filmmakers. Also, somebody that I had the privilege of knowing a little bit personally, and you know, that's great. Suddenly, there's, you know, all these people right now are watching Jeanne Dielman. You know, some will be perplexed, some will be amazed. You know, people are wondering, where did this film come from? I've never heard of this person, Chantal Ackerman. What's this film from? What, Belgium? You know, what? Uh, and this is all for the good, right?
Yeah.
Because it expands the canon away from an essentially American basis or English language basis. You know, it brings in other cultures. It brings in experimental film. You know, avant-garde film. These things are incredibly important, right? Uh, I've mentioned in teaching, you know, I saw the effect, the good effect of showing a Lubitsch or a Lang, but also, you know, certain experimental films, Maya Deren, you know, Meshes of the Afternoon, some of the Austrian avant-garde filmmakers of our time, like Peter Czerkaski, you know, who reworks bits from American films, like The Entity, the horror film The Entity. He made 3 experimental films out of reworking bits of The Entity, you know, and in my lecturing and stuff, I'll often use both The Entity, which I love, and Czerkaski. You know, use one of his shorts, and people are amazed by Czerkaski's shorts. They're so visceral, they're so powerful on the eye and on the ear, and so he's taking contemporary horror of the 80s and totally reworking it in an experimental way. So I think in this constant reworking of the past that you're talking about, Andrew, you know, let's expand the canon as far as we can, you know, and try to always bring in new elements to kind of move the canon around a little bit.
Yeah, it shuffles. Not only does it shuffle things up, but it's a more accurate reflection of the changing and evolution of cinema. When you
Mm,
introduce these new films into the, quote unquote canon, it it shines a light on them, but it also kind of reflects the changing of the time in terms of the audiences that exist now. The audience that exists now are not the same that exist 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. So the films I think that are considered the best of the best, I think need to reflect the modern day audiences. And oftentimes there are certain modern day films that best reflect the diversity within the audience, you know, just because of the access to it, of the diversity of the different things that the films are discussing. Um, yeah, I was very happy when they shook up that Sight and Sound list because I mean, think for decades upon decades, it was kind of the same. You always
yeah.
get the same type of cinema. It's kind of when a streaming site, I don't mean to pick on streaming sites, but when they have like a classic quote movie section, it's always the usual suspects.
Mm,
Casablanca, Gone with the Wind, all of the, the usual ones you always see. And it's like there's more to that than just the ones that we all know about in culture. You got to dig a little deeper. Yet again, that probably goes to like licensing access and distribution rights and stuff like that, as the case always tends to
Sure.
be. But it's like there's more to classic cinema than seeing the same, black and white films that Steven mentioned before,
mm,
there's more. For example, Orson Welles, one of my favorite filmmakers of all time, kind of a hero of mine in cinema. Citizen Kane is known as his masterwork, but there's a whole other group of his work that I don't think people talk about that is so more vastly interesting than I would think Citizen Kane is. And vastly interesting in the sense like he was making films that no one was making at the time and that wouldn't really make for decades, talking about surreal cinema and stuff like that. I think of The Trial with Anthony Perkins. That film is decades ahead of just anything, and it's just all of his work. It kind of gets like kind of not talked about because Citizen Kane is the title. You know what I mean? It was number one on lists all over the world. It's his masterwork that he made when he was so young. It's all of those things. But then there's just a whole list of other films that are just probably as equally interesting or
Mm.
even vastly more interesting because
Yeah.
of Orson Welles has always been kind of an enigma for me because it's the great unknown. You know, Adrian, I did get to listen to your audio commentary of the Immortal story, which was his last uh, fiction. I was gonna say feature length, but I don't think it's quite feature length. His last kind of fictional narrative story of his career, and that was 1968, and he wouldn't pass away till several, almost 2 decades later, and he never got to make another narrative feature past that hour-long television film, but there's always kind of an enigma of what the possibilities were, and
Mm.
that's just, like, one wrinkle in cinema is, like, what are the hidden possibilities that certain filmmakers never got to make, or
Mm.
there's always Stanley Kubrick never got to make his Napoleon film, and there's talk of that being revived now, and that I find that interesting
Mm.
because how is that going to look with modern filmmaking versus what he would do? I know he left extensive notes, but he was trying to compile that decades upon decades ago.
It's gonna be a lot more close-up shots to the face because Spielberg's gonna make
It's gonna be yeah, it's gonna be dolly shots.
That's
It's gonna
for
be.
sure. The slow movement
slow
in
slow
on
move-ins, yeah,
awestruck faces.
with the
I'm
magic
expect
hour happening, yeah,
I'm
Mm.
expecting oh, yeah, but there won't be 125 takes, I don't think, for certain scenes.
probably not, but
Probably not.
No.
but kind of circling around to I think kind of what we're talking about here, that with kind of not limiting the canonization of film history. I think that a lot of that has to, is the job of film criticism to help navigate people into them realms of other parts of cinema, as you've talked about before. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about, because I know in your career you've especially in recent years you've had a lot to say about the quality of that criticism. Noticing that a lot of the way that either newspapers, because you did leave the Age
Yeah.
paper after a while because you were kind of getting kind of fed up with that situation, I think, and also just in general, like it seems like I talked about it before, like a lot of the big mainstream films get the attention,
Mm.
so like you know what just a little bit about what you're feeling on some of the negative aspects of how film criticism, where it's been going, and just what we can do to improve that.
Mm. Well, what we can do to improve it is a big open question. I don't necessarily have terribly good answers to it, other than that people should do their own thing, as in starting their own things. I mean, I'm someone who began several online, film magazines. The Rouge was one, Lola was another that I did with various other people. I was involved with the early days of Censors of Cinema online. Now, these were all kinds of activities, sort of experiments where, cinephiles were getting together and saying, we can't read what we want to read. We're not seeing the kind of commentary, in depth, excited, informed commentary. We're not getting it anymore in newspapers, in some of the popular magazines. And it's I mean, the newspaper scene is just like the saddest thing in the world. That specialised commentary on all of the arts, not just film, of course, but specialised commentary on all the arts. It's just been squeezed out more and more. Film got squeezed out first because it was regarded as just the entertainment medium, and so the newspaper that I worked for still had some cultural investment in reviewing the opera from a critical standpoint, but when it came to reviewing the superhero movie, it's like we don't we don't need it, or we can just sort of run a thing which says if you like this kind of film, you'll like this kind of film. The whole aspect of actually engaging with films was falling more and more out of newspapers, and more critics lost their jobs, and more hacks came into these jobs. And so film is particularly in a difficult situation because there's always been this assumption that, everybody is a critic, everybody loves movies or not, everybody has an opinion on movies. So why not just anybody? can be a reviewer in a website or in a newspaper or in a magazine. Why can't it just be anybody? It's a democratic, blah blah. It's the democratic medium, and of course, cinema is a democratic medium. We should never forget that. Yes, of course, and I'm certainly not someone who believes that only credentialed professors should be allowed to speak about cinema. I mean, that has never been my position in my life. I'm not an elitist in that sense. I'm far more of a populist, but I'm a populist with a brain, and I like populists to have brains. It's like the famous thing that one of my heroes, Serge Daney, said. He said a film critic is someone, who loves a film uh, and who knows something about film and who knows how to say what they know about a film, right? So it's got to be not just love of a film, it's got to be an idea about a film, it's got to be a communication about the ideas of that film and the interest of that film and the value of that film. This is what has dropped out of a lot of film reviewing, a lot of film criticism. I'm always sort of, in my own way, just trying to press people, for instance, just read a bit more. I mean, there's so much available there to read online and anywhere else you can get your hands on it. It's not a hard thing these days. You don't have to have a special card to get into a university library to read, you know, really great stuff about cinema, uh, in-depth stuff, And so I'm always trying to encourage people. We'll read. You don't have to agree with everything you read, of course, but process it into yourself. See what you agree with, see what you don't agree with, and then arrive at your own personal point of view. Don't just start with "I like the film, 4 stars."
Yeah,
Get
I think
get
yeah, I
further
see
along.
what you're saying. Definitely,
Mm,
there's a as we talked about before, there's a little bit of a fast food nature to the way people
Mm,
like to consume criticism too. With how, like you said, kind of people are coming in, they're just kind of summarizing the movie, not really giving a lot of really in depth analysis of the movies. But I also think there's this kind of sense of especially now we noticed this during the pandemic as well, like the sense of not being looking towards experts for things, like people that really have a well-rounded knowledge of something. People kind of almost, I mean, even for I think me and Andrew, people being very big film enthusiasts that watch a lot of films. We even get shunned upon sometimes for being maybe a little bit too much in the know, maybe being a little pretentious for knowing something that the casual movie person doesn't know.
we
And then
do?
when we try to talk about it to people, we get looked at like we're like acting snooty or something. And I think that happens on all levels. I think people can get a little bit offended because they think you're maybe trying to pull something over on them, like that you're acting like you're smarter than they are, and it could offend people easily. People can get very
Mm,
sensitive about people being pretentious, but
yeah.
people like to overuse that. But I
Well,
think people, they just get annoyed that people know something that they don't.
right. There
Um,
is, I mean, this has been probably slow growing for many, many years now. There is an anti-intellectual mindset,
mm,
whereas those who are intellectuals, those who maybe speak in certain terms, use larger words, if you will, are like you just said, are seen as pretentious, as seen as above it, if you will, and there's a whole pushback against them without I think actually reading what they're saying.
yeah,
Just kind of taking that, oh, that person is that person has a PhD, therefore he's an elitist. You know what I mean? Kind of just quick judgments and stuff like that. But I think that has kind of expanded over the last several years. I don't think I don't think Rotten Tomatoes has helped a lot in that regard.
right.
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
in terms of film criticism, I think it's probably negatively affected film criticism because all people see are the numbers. They just
Mm,
see the
Yeah.
percentages of, and they see either rotten or
I mean, we
fresh.
we also
So,
talked about this
no.
with just a tad with Tony Stella, the illustratist. He fights the fight of in his profession. just against people that and there's nothing wrong with people that are graphic designers that use the computer to make their art, but sometimes he has to defend the fact that he is somebody that uses his hands, physically makes artwork, and does his art in this whole other way that's a little bit more his own. He's making the thing completely him, and of course he cleans up things on the computer too and stuff. Does some that uses he utilizes that, but he sometimes has to remind people that he does that extra thing that some people don't do. That
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
Mm.
pull images that have already been created by other people and
Oh
mesh
yeah,
them together to make. And so the
digital
same thing
photography
happens
and
with
stuff
film
like that.
criticism a lot. Is that you're having people that really put a lot of their own thoughts into their articles and their essays, but a lot of people are just kind of cut and pasting and pulling things and not
Mm.
really uh, actually putting their own selves into their writing.
Right, and I
Um,
think a
you know,
lot of that. I mean, we are in the digital, we're in the internet age now, and I think the invention of blogging, video blogging, YouTube, all that stuff, where people essentially became kind of everyday film critics, if you will, or movie reviewers or stuff like that. I know I did it. I did it for 3 years on YouTube and whatnot. I mean, and it's a tough medium to be intellectual in, or to be
Mm.
relatively in depth in. One, because you've gotta play to an audience. You've gotta, be interesting. You gotta be on camera, which is a whole other facet than writing is. And you've gotta and it can't be long and in depth. It can't be, it can't be 2 hours long. It can't be
we
anything
don't
like
care
that.
about that. We don't care about that here. We do 3 hour shows. I don't
Yeah,
care.
I'm just saying, but I meant,
Good
but
idea.
this is,
Yeah.
the podcasting is essentially like internet radio where you can go as long as you want.
Sure. Yeah.
But movie reviews and stuff like that, you I noticed that you can't be the same as when you were writing, because I wrote for a blog and then I did the YouTube stuff afterwards when it came to movie writing and stuff like that, and it was completely different format. You know
Mm.
what I mean? In writing, you could kind of work at it, shape it, form it the way you want it to be. In the video realm, you kind of had to it had to be already semi-formed when you were doing it. And then of course you could edit things afterward, clean things up, but it's not like writing where you could cut out whole paragraphs and rewrite everything and whatnot. So, and I think, kind of getting back to what Adrian was saying about kind of the shift of criticism kind of leaving the printed form, it did kind of go into the digital realm on the internet. But even then, it's gotten even probably even more complex. What I just mentioned with Rotten Tomatoes, with blogs and all that kind of stuff. If anything, there's so much of it that in a way it's a negative thing. There are so many people, movie critics online, or movie reviewers, more appropriately titled, that there's so much opinion
Mm.
upon of movies. Just if you go on Twitter after a movie comes out, you're gonna see every opinion under the sun, and it's going
I
to
mean,
be
but
endless.
it's okay to have a lot of opinions.
Well,
It's
it just
just,
that's what people gravitate towards, is the social media of it all.
yeah.
Like younger viewers, younger people who watch cinema are going to go immediately to social media for their movie opinions, as opposed to going to um, a movie critic's blog or a movie critic in print. They're going to go for something fast and easy and easily digestible. And I
Mm.
think just the audience has shifted, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, for me, one of the sort of things that can be done in this situation, as modest as it is, but I think it's significant, is that for me, it's been important that there have been some individuals, some groups who have tried to sort of offer a kind of guide, and I'm thinking of people like Catherine Grant, who does her blog site Film Studies for Free, which is basically just lists and recommendations, but always very definite, very pointed. If you're interested in Skolomovsky, here's 10 really great articles from all over the world. And someone like Ruben Demesure, he's a guy in Belgium, and he works on the website Subzian, and he does book roundup. But it's a book roundup that's far more open and extensive than you'll ever see in more mainstream places. It's not just American books, right? not just English language books. But he talks about books that he's picked up at film festivals, books he's found from small publishers, all about film, right? All cinema related, cinema and art related. And Ruben gives you an amazing guide. I've discovered personally so many things through his recommendations and Catherine's recommendations. So it's like we need guides. That's the thing.
Yeah.
There's so much out there. There's too much out there, as you're saying, Andrew. And once again, we need that incitement, that curiosity. It's like if you want a more in-depth view, don't just fall into the bloody echo chamber of Twitter. I
Mm.
actually have to actively avoid that sometimes. If I know that I want to write, for instance, about the current film, fairly current film, Tar, Todd Field's film, I don't want to go onto Twitter and read 6 billion, I hate it, I love it, I hate it, I love it, it's sexist, it's this, it's misogynist, it's racist, I mean, this is not helping me
Yeah.
to fall into this echo chamber, because a lot of what passes for film criticism now is either, as you were saying, Stephen, sort of cut and paste of the echo chamber. It's like some people say it's racist and some people say it's not, and it's like, oh, good Lord, give us an opinion, give us an analysis of your own, don't just
Well,
cut and
Yeah.
paste everybody
it's
else.
also I think some reviewers, it's also a reaction to what they assume how the reader's going to
Yes.
consume things is. So they're trying to give a broad opinion because they think that it's the best way to sum up what their thoughts are. But ultimately, what does everybody a favor, not only the consumer but also other, for criticism as a whole, is to have an opinion and have a distinct opinion, and it be your own, and it to just be a part of the organism as it is, and let it be unique. Because if you're trying to just not have an opinion because you're afraid that people won't like it,
Mm,
then you're not doing anybody any favors. And I think that kind of leans into, you've had some criticism of film criticism, and even, what you do with audio commentaries, that itself is something you've done for years, and you've done many commentaries. I think it's over 70, right?
mm,
Just way up there. And so even to that art form of criticism, because it's a different, everything's that's its own kind of form of criticism by itself. It's an analysis of a film over its runtime, and really getting into the background, and everybody's got different styles. And
mm,
so even there, I've you've had your times where you've even um, pointed out the lack in that department of audio and commentaries, where there's not enough being done, or people are not putting in enough time. Or speak to that a little bit for me.
mm. Well, it's simply that it's along the lines of what I was saying before, that I just think people should read a bit more, and
Yeah,
just get a sense of what film analysis really is. That I think we have too much weight these days on like sheer opinion. I love it, I hate it. 4 stars, 2 stars. We've got this sort of sheer opinion industry that we all become part of through social media and through our hot takes and all this nonsense. Uh, and what gets lost there is that to really go in depth to a film, you've got to have some tools. You've got to have a bit of methodology of how do you understand. For me, the question is always, how do I understand how the form or the style of a film meshes or doesn't mesh with its subject, with its content? And I've spent a lifetime so far studying that and studying how different filmmakers have done it and different films have achieved it or not achieved it. So to really get into how a narrative is formed, trying to work out what were the challenges that the director faced in this project, and what not only did they want to convey, but what did they have to convey? What was it that had to be clear or not clear in this film? So every film comes with a whole series of art and craft questions, of how it was made, what it expresses, what it can be connected to in the broader culture, as Andrew was talking about before. So for me, I believe that it's really good to read the way people have developed these tools, across many years. I mean, for me personally, I've always been interested in the history of film criticism. Uh, I've tried to read as widely as possible in magazines, in books, and so on. Uh, all different styles of critical writing, and I try to sort of bring that into myself in order to form my own analysis. There's a moment where there comes a moment where it is just you and the film, and you're really trying to make sense of that film in front of you, and that's the best moment in a sense, but it has to be informed by the wider context of what you've read, of what people have done before you in this area, and so that's why sometimes I think that the particular point of the criticisms I've made in this area in regards to DVD is that I think sometimes the producers, the commissioners of DVD extras, say, and Blu-ray extras, maybe they need to look a little further afield, to really look for. I'm not saying they have to look for the university lecturer, that's not necessarily the best person at all, Each of us proves ourselves by what we do, by what we actually write or what we actually say. But if you look around the internet, at the very least, sometimes you're going to find people who are currently not in the circles of people that are called upon to speak in DVD audio commentaries, for instance. I can think of many fine living film critics who are good talkers, who have never been asked to do a commentary, because, as in all realms of human activity, people tend to draw upon their immediate circle of the friends they have, of the people they trust, who they know will
Yeah.
deliver good work on time. I totally understand all of that. I worked in a newspaper. I know how that works. Um, but uh, you have to take a chance sometimes to get outside of your own circle, outside of your own culture, and go ask somebody else. Would
Well,
you?
yeah, I think it's important that we're getting different voices on
Mm,
all different types of releases. I mean, and I agree. I think that there are some certain, especially just, I mean, certain labels that you always see the same names on their commentaries or their video essays, and yeah, I get it. Like you said, they get comfortable with certain people being their voices, and there can be good and bad things to that, but I think it's a film by film thing for me. I think
yeah.
I want the right voice on the right film, and
Mm,
and sometimes you want something that might be because as you've talked about, like there are different types of audio commentaries too. We've even talked about it on here before, like you know um there's types of commentaries that are done by filmmakers themselves. They're very kind of loose and like almost like cut and pasted together in the sense of like they're just talking about things that happen behind the scenes, and they're not necessarily done in any kind of real kind of research heavy way. They're kind of just a way for a filmmaker to kind of look back on that time. But then when you're talking about people that are really hired to do audio commentaries, you got people that have different styles. They have
mm,
and the style that I picked up on when listening to some of yours. I listened to one particular one. I listened to the Crash
mm.
audio commentary, which I thought was really great. I thought
Thank you.
your style, you really you take it. And some people don't like this, and even for certain movies, I don't like this.
Mm,
But you really take it scene by scene, and you kind of talk about thematic elements. About each scene. And I think when it comes to something like a David Cronenberg, that works really well because he's a filmmaker that subliminally puts things in his
Yeah.
scenes. Visually, he's using a language that's not always as easy to get, especially on a first viewing or even a second viewing. You do a really good job of bringing context and bringing a sense of really learning about what's going on in the film as we're following it, and not maybe getting too caught up in like kind of rambling on about maybe personal history with the movie, or like, which is a good thing. I like that. I like personal history being brought into a commentary because I think that it makes the voice that I'm listening to
mm,
more personable. And I think but that's also another style of audio commentary where there's some commentators that's what they lean on. They lean on a lot of talking about their own personal context of watching this film and where they brought it from their history, and then of course adding in all that other stuff of like contextual stuff around it, like what the actors went through, what was happening behind the scenes. And I think that they're all great. I think they can all work in their own way. I
Well,
think it's just a film by film thing. I think it's what is best for the film. And like you said, sometimes maybe these producers of of these extras are not maybe thinking about that aspect as much. They're more kind of going with their reliable people. But yeah, I mean, do you agree with any of that?
yeah, yeah, I absolutely agree with everything you just said, Stephen. It's as you say, there are many styles of doing it. All styles can work. That was in fact something Orson Welles himself said about Shakespeare. He said there are any number of ways of playing Shakespeare, of presenting Shakespeare, and as long as it works, it's good. You know,
Yeah.
Very true.
whatever way that it can work, it's good. Uh, and for something to work is a mixture of it's a good experience to listen to. In the case of audio commentary, it's engaging. It teaches you something. It introduces new ideas to you. You know, for my own style, I err more on the side of analysis and ideas, less so about background information. I mean, I think if it's pertinent, I use background production information, but I don't go into the whole life story of this actor and so on and so forth unless there's a point to that. Um, I tend to use personal experience. For instance, the first time I saw a film, I only use that if there's really a point to it. If it
Yeah.
introduces an idea, I'll use personal experience. So yeah, there are all kinds of styles and all kinds of material that can be used in an audio commentary. I just sort of sometimes wish that some audio commentators, and particularly the producers who are commissioning them, just would stretch a bit further.
Mm.
Because you have to understand, I've always been in a strange sort of position between worlds. I worked in the world of journalism and newspapers. I've worked in the world of the university. And in both places, I met prejudice. When I was in the newspaper, other journalists would say to me, "What a pretentious intellectual you are." And then when I was in the university, I would get knocked back for funding on some project, and the assessment would say, Adrian Martin is just a journalist.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm.
he's just a newspaper guy, right? So I've seen this from both sides of the fence. I've seen
And
the exclusions. I've seen
yeah.
the stereotypes from both sides of the fence. And so for me, the whole question of audio commentary is to sort of have a path that is not one thing or the other. That
Mm.
is not
Yeah.
solely journalism, and it's not solely let's have fun, making gags about this film, and it's not pure, academies either. It's just trying to talk very directly to people's brains, about the
Mm.
experience of the whole experience, emotional, intellectual, physical, everything, the whole experience that cinema can be. Because I think another somewhat failing of the current film critical scene is that there's such emphasis now on enthusiasm, on pure enthusiasm and pure love. Now, enthusiasm and love, incredibly important things. I have them too, for cinema and for many, many films and many.
Well, you have to be to do the work that you have to. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's a motivating factor. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
absolutely. But it's not an end in itself.
yeah.
For me, it is not enough to simply say, I love it. I'm enthusiastic about it. Okay, love it, but then take us somewhere with that love. Take us into the thoughts that you've had because you love it. Where did love lead you with
Yeah.
this film? That's what I want to know. It's not enough for me to hear that somebody saw the film when they were 13 and they loved it. I was reading recently what I think is a very painful book. That's Tarantino's book of cinema speculation or whatever the hell it's called, and it's just this endless list of I saw this film when I was 13 at this drive-in, with my mother. And it's like, so what, Quentin? So what? You know, tell me something about the film that I don't already know. You know, I know the plot of the film. I know that, Robert Forster's in it. Tell me something else. Or tell me something about your own films, Quentin, that somehow these films inform. You know, and I get nothing of that from Tarantino's book. You know, it's a worthless book in my opinion.
It sounds
And
Yeah,
very it sounds
I
very
haven't.
much like him, though. If you've ever seen him in interviews, it's him
It's
talking about movies that he
it's a
saw.
self. He I mean, as much as I go back and forth on Tarantino, but he is a person that's very much about his point of view
Or his
and
own
wants people to
experience with movies.
his experience of film and stuff. But yeah, I mean, the roadblocks that you can have, that you were mentioning about, like, being labeled as a
mm,
particular type of film person. I mean, it happens to every. I think it happens to a lot of people in your position. Like, you're wanting to do work, but you're being labeled as just a pretentious film guy. But
Mm,
I think it happens for other people in the business too. There's a lot of other commentators that get labeled as not being educated because they didn't go to a university, or that
mm.
their educations come from watching movies. I
Yeah,
mean,
which is
Tarantino is a great example.
yeah.
Tarantino himself is not an educated film. He didn't get filmmaking degree, but his knowledge came from just watching movies. And I think that prejudice happens too for a lot of other commentators, that they get put in a position where they get labeled as not, uh, maybe not being the person for this, because they don't on the surface look like they have the education to talk about a certain subject matter.
Mm,
mm.
And so I think that it happens a lot with a lot of other people too, and I
yeah,
think that that's a
yeah.
problem. It's a problem.
Yeah, let me be clear about this. Where the question of education is not a question of university certification.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's nothing to do with having a university degree or being doctor, professor, whatever. It's education is what you get for yourself, however way you get it. Whether it's through a university, whether it's through reading the internet, whether it's through going to a library, whether it's through talking to friends. We educate ourselves, right? And there's always room to educate ourselves more. This I firmly believe, right? And, sometimes I think that, people who get kind of reduced obsessions with particular kinds of films and so on, they're not educating themselves further. They've educated themselves to know every name on the credit of an Italian exploitation movie. That's great. I'm glad they know it. But they should be reading a bit further. I mean, as you say with Tarantino, I too have mixed feelings about Tarantino. I like some of his films a lot. Uh, and he has educated himself in a certain way. But when he talks about, for instance, his love of the film reviewer, Kevin Thomas, I think it is, that he goes on and on about in that book, I can't help but think, Quentin, why didn't you read Robin Wood as well? Why
Mm.
didn't you read Raymond Dunyat as well? Why didn't you read, Molly Haskell, Laura Mulvey, whoever?
Yeah.
Just get outside of, your one track guy, Kevin
Yeah.
Thomas. You know, just expand your horizon a bit. This is always my point. Is we can also expand our horizons more than we already have.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that. I think that's something we're always pushing for on here, is to continue the, trying to educate yourself, trying to
Mm,
expand on what you think you already know. And I think that's important. But not even just education wise. I mean, I think also just people's backgrounds in general are something that, influences how they learn about film as well. If you didn't come from if you don't have the ability, and I've brought this up before, the time to invest that much in your education, as much as you would like, then people are going to come at their opinion. They're going to express their opinions in a different way, because they're
mm,
not coming at it from a purely academic way. They're looking at it as how they filtered their viewing and their opinions of film through their own life. And that's also valuable too.
yes,
I think that the more we can make, um, criticism of film, it didn't have to necessarily be relatable to everybody, because that's impossible. You can't relate. Everybody can't relate to everybody, because everybody's coming from different backgrounds, from
Mm.
different places around the world. But the more you can hone in on what, um, you know, how you've experienced film and how it made you feel, and how, like as you've been trying to say, like we don't want to just hear the surface stuff. We want to hear why, like not just that you loved it at 13, but that like what did how did you feel about it? Like what and how do you feel about it now? Like has anything changed between
Yes.
then? Like
Mm,
the more you can bring your own
yeah.
experience into it, I think the more it can excite people into it. We love movies about making movies. And why we love movies about people that make, like for instance, Cinema Paradiso is a film that I think a lot of people just really kind of look at that movie as a movie that gets you excited about movies because you
Mm,
see the love of film in this kid's eyes. We see that image all the time of the kid looking up at the big screen, and we want to know, and then we see his journey through the whole movie, and so we want to know more about where that spark and what if we can go back and look at that and expound on it. And I think that there are certain commentators that like I said, kind of that's their strength is that they're really good at taking their own experience and melding it into their opinions about film, and not just a purely like, I know this about the movie and I'm going to express it to you,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
it's coming from them more than it is
yeah,
coming from the books and the things
yeah.
that they read.
Yeah, look, I agree with you, and I would add that I say we should all kind of educate ourselves more and read more, but I also mean we should expand our life more in the sense of we shouldn't stereotype ourselves. Like, I've met many people, we've all met many people who say things like, I'm a working class, I was born working class, so I hate all this university professor elitism, right? And it's like
Yeah.
they're almost saying, I refuse to read an academic book because it's not me, it's not where I was born, it's not my working class roots. Now, look, I am a working class person. I was born in a working class family. I grew up in a working class suburb. If you could see the thinness of my wallet right now, you'd know I'm more working class than ever. Even though I've also, like a whole lot of people, been up and down the social ladder. And yes, I worked in a university for a while, and but I'm a freelance writer. I'm one of
Yeah.
these floating sort of freelance, not rich people. But in my life, I made a decision that I really wanted to read things, that I wanted to get access to things. I found a way to get into university libraries. I taught myself to read French because I wanted to read, Cahiers de Cinema and Positif magazine. No one told me to do that. My parents hadn't a clue what the hell I was doing,
mm,
teaching myself French, for God's sakes. They couldn't see any point to this at all. My parents were not culture vultures at all. Uh, and similarly, with say film festivals, I saved money for years to take myself to the Rotterdam Film Festival because I knew there's a certain kinds of films that I would only discover there. I mean, this is in the 90s, right? Before the whole internet explosion. And I knew that if I wanted to watch the films of Raoul Ruiz, from the past, Boris Barnett, and even at that time, Abbas Kiarostami, Hosher Shin. If I wanted to really see these films and experience them in the best way and talk about them and meet people who knew about them, I had to save my pennies and book a plane to the Rotterdam Film Festival. And I did that for myself. That changed my life. That expanded my horizons. It introduced me to all kinds of people and magazines and editors and critics, and I did that for myself out of my quote unquote working class roots. So I don't believe that people should stereotype themselves
mm.
and limit their own options. We can all
Yeah.
learn more. We can all have new experiences.
Yeah,
Sure, sure. There's a lot of motivating factors that go with that. I mean,
right.
everybody's way into life is different.
Of
Like
course.
not even if you're working class, not everybody, maybe has uh, you know, the makeup of somebody that
Right.
or has the lifestyle things that happen for them early on that allows them to be put in a position to even save money to go to a festival.
Yeah, the
Everybody's
context.
life.
I
Everybody's life
disagree with
starts out.
you there. I mean,
Yeah.
look, anyone can have the thought. I want. a certain life experience, and I'm going to work towards that. That's what I
Sure.
do. It didn't come from my family. It didn't
Yeah.
come from my culture around me. Honestly, it came from me, from my drive, from my desire to have an experience, and anyone can have that. That's
Exactly.
important.
It is important. I think it's important that people need to um, have goals and work towards them and work hard to meet that. And I think that gets lost sometimes with people because they're always thinking about the end result, and they're
Mm,
allowing themselves to get unmotivated because people want things fast these days.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so they don't look down the line. They don't think about that this is going to take hard work. Trust me, I work physical labor every day.
yeah,
right.
Having people to do physical labor work every day is difficult for kids. They don't want to get out and do any real work. And that goes along with intellectual stuff too. I think people don't want to spend more time reading, and but that's not everybody. There's people that very much want to do them things, but not always. They get discouraged, or they have certain situations that make it harder for them. So I think it is a hard thing to judge overall, but I do think I understand, and I agree that we should have expectations for the criticism. I think that it's important that we put expectations on the things that are being put out there in the forefront to educate people about film. It's important that stuff is actually giving them some, enriching them, and it's not wasting their time. It's not just giving them bullet points. We need to go deeper. I completely agree with that. So,
yep.
but
I think
Andrew,
we're on the same page there.
Yeah, I would say,
yeah,
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 all
yeah,
good stuff. Yeah, I say this all the time. Everybody's life is unique and kind of specific to their situation, to the context of things going on. I mean, some
yeah,
people go down one path and then are forced to go into other path because of either their choice or because of financial reasons, personal reasons, whatever the case may be. Some people don't end up going down the path that they're happy with. And some people are unfortunately are never able to get off of the path that they're unhappy with, and their life just kind of is goes down that path, and they do kind of fall into that. I'll also say this, I guess, to a lot of people listening. It's never too late for a lot of things in life. You know
Mm,
what I mean? If you're not a cinephile at, 19, doesn't mean you can't be one at, 39, or 59 or whatever the case may be. The one beautiful thing with cinema, which I've said so many times on this podcast and just in life in general, it it's always there. It doesn't go anywhere. If anything, it just keeps expanding because
it's
time
wait,
keeps
it's
moving.
waiting on you. It's
It's just
waiting on you.
waiting.
Yeah,
It's just this entity that you can travel through anytime you want throughout any
mm,
part of your life,
for
and
sure.
there's nothing stopping you really now. It's more accessible than ever before. So,
yeah,
and that's the same with film education. There's decades upon decades of books and writings that you have access to. There's documentaries that we haven't really talked about cinema history, about movie history, about
Mm,
production, about all the
yeah,
nuances. That's how I kind of learned about all this, is just literally listening to people talk about movies and the history of movies. That's
yeah,
kind of like listening to an Adrian Martin, a commentary here, a
yeah,
visual essay there. People who were around the production at the time, I think, was a great asset. The late Peter Bogdanovich, I think, was one of the greatest assets we had up until his passing, because he had such direct contact with people that had been gone for a very long time, like an Orson Welles, a Howard Hawks, a John Ford, all of these other people and whatnot. And we still have records of that now. And I guess that is the positivity of the internet age, is you can access those records very quickly and very easily. It's one Google search away, really. It's
yeah,
the
yeah.
kind of I've always said this with intelligence, with knowledge, we have access to everything. It's just people's willingness to access it, and of
yeah,
course their ability to process it as well. But the
Yeah,
access is
yeah.
there now more than ever.
It's always available. I mean, and going back to commentaries a little bit, we can't talk about. I mean, there's a couple. I think Andrew, he's got some that he's in. One of the personal ones that I really enjoyed of yours, because it is a personal one for you, was Johnny Guitar.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, your Johnny Guitar, I know is a very personal film for you, and that you got to do the commentary on it. I'm sure was a great joy. And Also, we can't talk about your commentary work without talking about your partner, Christina Alvarez Lopez. Does a lot of work with you. So talk about that working relationship and how that the dynamic is.
Mm. Well, I'll talk about the collaboration with Christina. My partner is that's particularly in the area of, well, we write a lot of things together, and we also make audiovisual essays, video
Yeah,
essays,
yeah,
and we haven't done so many of them for the DVD Blu-ray companies. We're always available to do more. Let me add. Uh, and that's something, that Christina has been working on since about 2009. This form of the video essay, and just as you're saying, Andrew, that anyone can become a cinephile at any age. I mean, I had this experience that I found a new form of film criticism, of film writing, in a sense, but writing in video, in images and sounds, in presenting ideas through editing, through montage, through the mixture of voice and image and music and so on. It's a very creative thing. So that introduced me to a whole new sort of creative aspect of film criticism through my contact with Christina, and through collaborating with her now for over many years. We've done hundreds and hundreds of these uh, audiovisual essays, and often it arises simply from, we're watching a film together almost every day, and we see a film and we think, oh right, this scene. We just did one, for instance, that was about scenes of driving, where a woman wants to learn to use the gear shift, the gear stick in a car. And we saw a recent Italian TV series, The Lying Life of Adults, which this is a pattern that goes through the series, that this girl wants to drive, and she's got all these macho Italian guys who are saying, no, you can't drive, and I'll teach you to drive, baby. And, so you get all these like gender, sexual, erotic scenes around the gear shift, right? And we watched that and we thought, hey, there was a great scene in Monty Hellman's Two Lane Blacktop, where the woman wants to learn to drive, and James Taylor teaches her,
yeah,
but
yeah,
then
yeah.
says, you can't do it, you can't drive. And then we remembered further back Howard Hawks's film Redline 7000, where James Caan lets a woman drive his sports car on the sports track, but then gets really angry with her at the end of it, and says, "Get out of the driver's seat." So it's all this like gender
Did,
dynamics
did did you
around.
include the scene from Gone in 60 Seconds where Angelina Jolie and Nicolas Cage are sitting in the car and she like jumps over to the gear shift? No, I'm just
Yeah,
kidding.
Had to get in the Nicolas Cage reference.
we could
Yeah, I
have
gotta get the Nick Cage reference in
we
there.
could have included that. There's of course there's a million things we could have included, but
Sure. Yeah.
we picked it just to the three so that we could keep comparing the Italian series with these older examples. So, that's the kind of a film criticism that arises from viewing, from talking, and from playing. From
Yeah.
playing with clips and putting them in different orders. And so, that's something that Christina and I, well, we have a monthly series for a Dutch film magazine, Filmkrant, and that's online. It's our
Okay.
series called The Thinking Machine. So every month, this one, Gear Shift, was in the Thinking Machine series. And so, yeah, so it's just a sort of it's what you said before, Stephen, that it's like daily living with cinema. It's a way of expressing that, of just having a sort of a random thought or a random connection between two films. We do a lot of things that are comparisons between different films. Sometimes same films of the same director, sometimes totally different filmmakers, different periods, different styles of cinema. But we find a sort of a way to compare, or contrast, to connect two things. So that's as I say, it's a creative form of criticism, and I've become very interested in all the forms of creative criticism. Because writing is for me creative.
Yeah.
Writing is not an academic pursuit. For me, even when I worked in the academy, I was still trying to do creative writing. Expressive writing. Literary writing, poetic writing, personal writing. This is a this has been a major thing for me as a writer in my life. I think of myself essentially as
Yeah.
uh, a writer and a film critic. That's sort of what I am. Um, And so, yeah, the audio visual essay work is an extension of that into a new creative form. Uh, and I think it still has many possibilities. I think sometimes on the DVD and Blu-rays that we're seeing, there's sometimes a bit of a limited sort of style or format used for this. That there's a series of images and there's a sort of scripted voice on top. Which, as you say, is very related to audio commentary. It's like audio commentary with illustration sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Criterion have used that style with James Quant and all kinds of things. But sometimes you can get more creative with it. You can get more playful with the way you do it. You don't need necessarily a narrating voice.
Hmm.
You can sort of get a point across simply through the juxtaposition of the montage of elements. That's the kind of things that Christina and I are interested in.
That's cool. Yeah, I've always been a fan of the visual essay. It's probably my favorite type of extra because the way you describe it, it really in a sense it's like a short film. It's a short film that is being created to either direct itself at a certain point of filmmaking or film or the film a film genre or a certain style of film. You're talking about like these gear shifts and things. That's a certain kind of small aspect of
Mm,
film that you're finding a through line through history and relating it to each other, and then in that can get people interested in just these other films based on this
mm,
one small element. Um,
exactly.
I think about what was there was a visual essay. I believe it was one that when we talked to Chris O'Neill, he
Mm,
did a visual essay on a film, and I can't remember what the film was, but he did a very similar thing where he tied something in and it went through through all different films, and I was just like, now I want to watch all these movies. Like
Oh,
I
yeah.
was
I
like,
think it was the one he did for, Ringo Lam's film. That the one you're talking about?
it was either it was either that one
Burning
or
Paradise?
it was either the Burning Paradise visual essay or it was something he hadn't released yet, but it was something he shared with us.
Mm.
Okay.
But
Well,
it was
with
yeah,
Chris, that's a great example because he is an artist. I mean, he's a
yeah.
filmmaker. He's an artist who has also done film criticism in written form, and now he has the chance to do video essays, and he gets a good lot of work on that. And so he brings the filmmaker's skill to it, which is precisely that it's got to have rhythm, it's got to have an expressive force. It's got to have a shape, the thing that,
Yeah.
that you edit, right? And
It does. His experimental filmmaking definitely kind of showed up in that a little bit, I
sure,
think.
yeah,
Hmm.
So I agree. It's something that definitely still has room to expand on and actually you know really can surprise you with how you relay the information.
mm,
And when we talk back this all the time, filmmaking in general is can be expressed in many different languages, not just we even to a point where when we think about movies that overuse narration, that's typically kind of a taboo thing. You're like, we don't want to hear narration through the whole movie. So hearing a narration through a whole visual actually short sample size, but yeah, maybe there's a way we can do that, but also do it just visually,
mm,
in a way and put images together that can tell a story just by looking at them. And yeah, I think that's really cool that you're experimenting with that
mm,
idea with the visual actually. So I hope other companies hear this, and if you want something that's a little bit different for your film, hey, they're doing it.
yeah,
If
yeah.
so yeah, that's good. That's good.
Mm. And let me add that a relatively recent one that we were very proud of is the one we did for The Music of Chance, uh,
Uh-huh.
the release of that film, where they had the critic, very fine critic A.S. Hamra doing audio commentary. And they asked Christina and I to do, roughly 10-minute audiovisual essay, and we used some narration there. But for us, it was a way of re-editing aspects of that film to explore a very particular thing, which is that there's this whole model of a town with all these miniature people in it, and trying to use that as the microcosm to see the whole film. So that's a good example. If anybody wants to see the kind of work we've done for a DVD Blu-ray release, that's a good example, I think.
I did watch one visual essay you did. on a Blu-ray for the film, the Kieslowski film, No Chance
Yeah.
or No End. I'm sorry, No End, where you did use this idea of the way they the characters in the film look at the camera, and they
Mm.
look, they're piercing through, kind of using that as a through line of some of the discussion you have in that essay. I thought was an interesting thing that you did there. So
Mm.
yeah, I mean, there's as we've talked about through this whole discussion, there's just many different avenues into this thing that these commentaries, these visual essays, these interviews. There's different ways to do it, and that you know we should not get complacent. We should not get stuck in our own ways of wanting to do these things all the same way. They in themselves are art forms. Commentaries, visual essay, they're all art forms, in that we should be trying to uh, be more, experiment and be more interesting even with these things.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Let me tell you a funny story about a company that I won't name, that approached me at one point and said, Adrian, we'd really like you to do video essays for our releases. And I said, that's great. But I thought to myself to ask, and in your mind, what is a video essay? What is the format of a video essay? And they said, well, it's you talking into the camera. That's what they
Huh.
thought a video essay was my face talking into a camera. I mean, that's not a video essay, right?
I mean, I've seen some like that where there's a person talking, for whatever amount of time and talking about the movie. That's one way I've seen it, but it's not really a full a visual essay. That's not my favorite version of one. I can tell you
No,
that.
it's not an audio commentary, and it's not an audio visual essay.
It's
It's
like an interview slash just
interview introduction. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And I mean, that can be fine too. They're
Sure.
probably my least favourite extras, actually. Those ones that are simply, a camera on somebody being interviewed. But it's another form that can give
Sure.
information.
Sure.
Mm.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, it's interesting, man. Yeah, like you said, sometimes it's the people that are I mean, this isn't in any business you're talking about. The people that are in charge sometimes they're not necessarily, they've lost, their passion maybe, or lost their way of wanting to do, it's become a business. Capitalism is a thing, and money is a thing that kind of rolls everything. So it kind of makes the passion, can make people lose the passion for that thing, or their willingness to experiment, you
Mm.
know
Mm.
in that thing can kind of mess up a lot of things.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we don't live in a society that values art as much as we feel like it should.
Mm.
And so that's unfortunate. But um, also with your career, of course, you've written some books. Please talk about some of the books you've written. I know, at the forefront, I know you've written was it the Mysteries of Cinema, uh, is one book, or I know you Once Upon a Time in America, you wrote a book on that as well. So talk about
Yes, I
your
did.
journey into writing books.
Yeah. I mean, as I mentioned before, I've written, in many, many different sort of styles and formats, from, tiny newspaper capsule reviews through to full length books. And basically, well, it's like with all fields of film critical work. Certain doors open, certain opportunities present themselves, or one struggles to make that opportunity present itself. And so, yes, I mean, I've done a mixture of books. Some of them are short books, like Once Upon a Time in America for the British Film Institute Classics series. That's actually going to be reprinted soon.
Oh, nice.
And my book Mysteries of Cinema, well, that's one that I spent a lot of time on putting together, because it's like what I think are my best essays from a period from the early 1980s through to recently, and sort of in-depth essays. I referred earlier to the horror film The Entity, and Peter Czachowski, the Austrian experimental filmmaker. That essay is in Mysteries of Cinema. My essays on genres that I love, teen movies, thrillers, stuff that I generally don't get asked to do audio commentaries on, because I've been stereotyped against my will as the highbrow art cinema guy. I'm
Yeah.
okay for Buñuel and, Fassbinder, but when it comes to Blake Edwards and other things that totally love, Lubitsch and, teen movies. I've spent, so many decades studying teenage movies. And so, my essays on popular genres are in that book, Mysteries of Cinema, as well as lots on, all kinds of directors that I have really loved and admired their work, Raoul Ruiz, Philippe Garel, Godard, all of these kinds of figures, Chantal Ackerman, all of these figures that we've been mentioning over the last few hours. So I think if people want to try one hit of my work, that's really the one I recommend. Is
Yeah, yeah,
Mysteries of Cinema. I think it's the one that I'm proudest of. But I'm proud of all my work. I did a book on the Mad Max movies, of the
yeah.
first three Mad Max movies, that was put out by an Australian publisher, and one day I'll get a chance to stick number 4, Fury Road, and possibly any.
You might want to wait. They might make a few more of them.
Yeah.
Oh, I believe so. Yeah,
Yeah.
Furiosa and other things are coming in that series. So I actually have the rights for the book back in my own control. So I'm going to expand the book
Oh,
one
nice,
day.
nice.
So that's the kind of span of things I've done. Works on popular cinema genres, works on directors such as Raoul Ruiz. I did a book with Raoul, which was done in Spanish. Several of my books are in Spanish. I didn't write them in Spanish, but they got
Yeah,
translated for a Spanish or an Argentinian or Chilean publisher. This is the kind of thing that happened to me because of film festivals, right? It's only
yeah,
through going to the Valdivia Film Festival in Chile, Rotterdam that I mentioned, Buenos Aires Film Festival in Argentina. Some of these places published these books, as part of their own activities. So that's a kind of circuit that I found very congenial to my interests and to my work. Uh, and my very first book, I'll mention that too, came out in 1994. It's a book called Phantasms. It's a book of short essays on popular culture trends, films about ghosts, films about aggression,
yeah, yeah.
whatever was sort of coming up, in my mind as a viewer at that time. And trying to discern some of the trends, some of the fads, the obsessions within popular culture, film, TV, music, and so on. So that was my first book.
Nice, nice. Well, Adrian, this has been fantastic.
Mm, good.
I think we had a great discussion about very different many different areas, and I think, talking about film criticism and where that is, and the work that we need to do to help educate people is and expand people's minds, especially young people's minds today, to help them get us back to a place where we can look at film as being more of an something that needs to be can be looked at more than just escapism is an important thing.
Mm,
And I think that that's an important thing that should be part of any commentator or critic's goal, is to just lengthen the life of cinema. It's not, it feels like it as much history as we have, it feels so short because we're only paying attention to one small part of it, and that's the now.
mm,
It feels,
mm,
and it even feels like the things that are newer are getting already forgotten.
mm,
In the last 10 years or 50, we're already forgetting about the last 10 years because we're already focusing on what's coming next. And that's a lot to do with the marketing machine of filmmaking. But I think that this discussion is got a lot of great points that I think people need to take with them, and maybe think about it. Maybe think about picking up a book, start talking, getting a little deeper into some of the stuff you love. And
mm.
but we very much appreciate you coming and talk with us. And yeah, we had a good, nice, lengthy
All right,
discussion, a
sure.
little over 2 hours.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no.
No,
Yeah.
well, it's been great fun for me. Great to talk to you guys and, really explore some of these ideas.
All right. We appreciate the work you do, man, and hope you have a good rest of your day.
Okay. And you too as well.
Thank you. And we're back. Hello.
How
Hi.
fast?
Hope you
How
guys
fast
are.
and easy was that?
I know. Well, for us, it was really fast because we do our intro and we do this transition. A little behind the scenes here, right after each other.
Yes.
so, so it's really fast for us. But you've been
For-
waiting 2 hours to get to this point, so
I
we've
know.
met you in the future. But we are here on Spy number 93. Once again, great interview with Adrian Martin. We very much appreciate him coming on to talk with us. And so now we move on to our Blu-ray announcements for this past week. Some really heavy hitters this week, some good stuff, some things that were surprising. And where should we start, Andrew?
Let's start with something that got announced this week that I don't know if was a bit of a surprise, but I think it's something that is much welcomed, and that is Second Sight is doing a 4K release of The Changeling.
Yes, yes. This was kind of a surprise. I mean, we did get the Severin 4K not that long ago.
That's
They up
why I thought it was a bit of a surprise since
Yeah, yeah.
we
They
just
upgraded
got
their
that
Blu-ray.
announcement
Yeah,
recently.
and so, yeah, I mean, it's of course, once again, Second Sight really kind of takes center stage when it comes to like things like packaging. Packaging's very beautiful, and of course, once again, we don't know much. I don't know that this is the complete features list. It might be,
Right.
but it's still got some features here. We got audio commentaries, interviews. There might be a few new features on here too, but it is probably the same 4K restoration and an HDR presentation as that Severin release, I believe. So, yeah, and they're going to get. There's also the kind of art cards that are going to be coming with this. The original soundtrack is also going to be in here. Um,
Yeah,
so
that also came with the Severin release as well.
yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah, the Severin release came out actually in October, so that thing's been out for quite a few months already. But what is unique about the Second Sight is, of course, like Steven mentioned, the packaging is solid. Like this
oh yeah,
thing's like
yeah.
a brick, lifting it up. Comes with a 108-page book,
It's pretty
which
hefty.
is pretty hefty, and that's probably where all the weight comes from.
Yeah, yeah.
Also coming with, like Steven said, a CD and then 5 collectible art cards as well. When it comes to just the comparison back and forth, it seems like it's rather comparable when it comes to certain things, although the audio commentaries look to be different,
Okay.
or maybe they're yeah, I think it's a different audio commentary. I'm just going back
That's
and forth
typically
on it.
the
Yeah.
interchangeable thing. A lot of times, things like interviews and sometimes they share them things or, something. But
It
a lot of
does
times the audio commentary is the one thing that is
yeah.
definitely different.
I've noticed that several times, maybe because maybe that's where the exclusivity comes into play, where it's
It's
like if you're exclusively getting these specific people, you
yeah.
know what I mean?
Well, I mean, it's
That
also that I think out of all the features that you do, not that it's easy, but it is probably one of the easier ones. The less, I mean, you do your homework, you sit down, you watch a movie, and you talk about it, you record an audio commentary. Like I said, not saying it's easy, but out of all the things, it takes probably the least amount of, budget. It's better on the budget too. Like I'm assuming an audio commentary is a cheaper feature to fund. Like when you got somebody that's doing a visual essay, unless they're doing all the work, they're doing the editing, all the pulling all the parts together, that takes a lot more time. And then, something like an interview, you got to set that interview up. You got to get with the people. You got to, so something
yeah.
like an audio commentary is a lot, probably one of the easiest things to achieve when it comes to most of these
Yeah,
things.
I just did a quick comparison when it came to the Seven release and this release. It looks like all of the special features line up exactly the same.
Okay.
And the audio commentary is the only thing I'm questioning is because on the Seven release, it says an audio commentary with director Peter Medak, producer Joel B. Michaels, moderated by Seven Films' David Gregory. And when it comes to this release by Second Sight, it says that same thing, audio commentary with director and producer, but it doesn't say if it's the one that's moderated by, Gregory
I'm going to guess it is, but
from Severin. I mean,
yeah.
maybe they just left that out, and if that's the case, then these are the exact same features
Yeah.
down the list.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess it's the same one.
Okay, I
That's
trust you on that.
I'm assuming maybe it was just for the fact that he's David Gregory's the guy that runs Severin. So
Maybe they just left that out of the press release
yeah,
for
yeah.
rights issues or whatever, I
Or
don't know.
just the
Just
fact
making
that
shit up.
the other person that put out the other changeling is the guy from Severin. They didn't want to be obvious about it. So
Yeah, they didn't
maybe
wanna
that's
cross the streams,
they don't
as they
cross the
say.
streams and make it so obvious. So, but yeah, I mean, look, if you already got the Severin release, I'm sure that's I mean, that's obviously pretty similar release content wise. Like That's all the same. Really, your only difference here is maybe the book. Obviously, this
Yeah, the
hefty
book
book,
packaging.
hefty book that's got some great writers involved. Alexandra Hella Nicholas, Rich Johnson, two people we've had on, are in here, and a slew of other people have articles, have essays in the book. So, um, and then of course the packaging is very deluxe. So it's really up to you. I think if you already have that Severin release, you're probably set. But you know, people have their reasons. Like I'm a box set whore, so
Yeah, I was gonna say
this is really appealing to me. But
and if you're like a specific collector of everything Second Sight
sure,
and you
that
want to
too.
get all the
Yeah.
limited editions, then
Uh,
obviously you're gonna buy it.
I have the Blu-ray of Severin. I'm kind of okay with that. I'm not
I
even
have
got
the
the
Blu-ray
4K.
as well.
Yeah,
It's actually like it's the first Seven release I ever got
yeah,
was Changeling on the Blu-ray.
yeah. I'm kind of okay with my Blu-ray. I don't feel the need to upgrade this to a 4K personally. But okay. Well, where should we move on to? Kino? Get Kino done real quick.
Yeah, sure. Let's go to Kino because they don't have much in the way of
Did you call
things
it
this
Kina?
week.
Kina?
Kino.
I thought you said it really when you said it. It sounded
Cappuccino.
like real fast that you said, "Let's go over to Kina."
No, I did not say that.
Yes, you did. You
Although
said,
you could pronounce it
I'm
that way,
gonna.
I don't think
You
it
know what? I'm
matters.
gonna go back and I'm gonna listen to that and see. It
Yeah,
sounded
do
like
it.
you
Do
said
it.
Kina.
Prove it.
We're gonna do it right
So
now.
so we got a couple of things, really only 2 announcements this week, and that is A Big Man on Campus from 1989, starring Alan Katz, Corey Parker, Cindy Williams. This is a film I actually don't even know, but it was shot by no, not no, directed by Jeremy Kagan, who I think directed The Big Fix and
Mm.
The Sting 2, which I don't think anyone
Eh,
ever talks about.
The Sting too. Jesus Christ, that's like the sequel to Saturday Night Fever that Stallone directed. It's like nobody
You
talks
know,
about that.
they have it's weird because they made sequels to these all-time, like, well-known
Great movies.
films.
Well, just like French Connection too.
Yeah, like, they made
Yeah,
a French Connection too. They made a sequel to Chinatown,
yeah, yep.
and it's like, okay,
Uh, we don't give a
we
shit
don't
about
really
that.
need this,
I think
but
I think they
alright.
purposely just kind of like forget them. They're like, let's forget about that movie.
Yeah, there's a reason why no one remembers these. Yeah, The Sting 2 came out in 1983, and it does not star Paul Newman or Robert Redford. It stars Jackie Gleason and Carl Malden,
Yeah.
um,
Now, so,
and others.
and
Oliver Reed is in
some
it.
sequels to great movies, they stuck, but in the wrong way. Like the Jaws sequels, like all the Jaws
Oh
sequels,
goodness, I
like
forgot about those.
all them Jaws sequels just became kind of like and it's probably because of the genre it is, being a shark attack film, that they kind of all stuck in different ways because people get enjoyment out of them from a comical standpoint. But
Oh yeah,
y-
there's the one with Michael Caine in it where
oh
he
yeah, the
doesn't
fourth
even
one.
remember making that movie.
Is that the fourth one?
I
Or is that the third one?
maybe it's the third one.
I think maybe it's Jaws 3D. Maybe
I think you're. I think let me. I could look it
it
up,
could have been
but
in the fourth. I could be right the first time. The fourth one, maybe. I think
I think it was Michael Caine's like 90th birthday the other day.
he's
Just randomly.
Michael Caine.
He's still acting. He's not retired yet.
They keep saying
Um,
he's retired, but he's not.
I think that's all a
It's
bold face
bullshit.
lie.
He's going to be in that Oppenheimer movie somewhere.
Oh yeah, he always pops up in
Oh, he
Christopher
wasn't in the
Nolan
last
stuff.
one though. He wasn't in the last one. I don't think he was in
Tenet?
Tenet. I don't think he showed up in that movie.
I'd have to go back. I only watched it once.
Yeah,
I
I
didn't.
own it. I've only
So
watched it
do
once
I.
too.
I probably should. I probably should rewatch it at
Well,
some
it's
point.
the most divisive of the Christopher Nolan movies, I feel like now.
Well, because it came out
That thing
during
that
like
happened.
they put it out way too early. Like movie theaters weren't really open yet.
Well,
People
still,
were too
but the
busy worried
movie
about
itself is still
surviving.
kind of wonky. Yeah, it's not.
It's a hefty movie
It's a
as most
wonky
of Nolan
movie.
stuff is.
But we're
But
all
yeah,
over the
so
place.
Michael Caine was in Jaws: The Revenge from
Is that the third
1987.
or fourth one?
I don't they didn't put a number on it.
God damn it!
It's not helpful.
Is it the second one?
It's not
Do you
helpful.
know anything?
No, I don't. I've never seen the Jaws sequels, so
Really?
I have no idea.
Okay.
This is your world.
I didn't say it was my world. I just figured you'd know something about them.
N-
Damn it!
No, I mean other
And you're
than
the one
like
that likes to pop around the internet.
sharks keep coming back, and they just don't. They
You're
just
the one that
won't
likes to
stop.
pop. Hey, what about that new shark movie that Tommy Wiseau's making?
Oh my goodness! You see that trailer?
Yeah. Okay,
Ridiculous.
this is how I feel about it. Stupid. Why is he making this shit? Like you made a movie sincerely that ended up being an all-time like good bad movie, but now you're just making a shitty movie because you know that that's what people want. Okay, so it's I don't know. It doesn't seem sincere to me. That's why I just don't. I don't know. But I don't know Tommy Wiseau personally,
No,
so
it is actually the first film he's directed since The
since The
Room,
Room, yeah.
and not that he hasn't been in a lot of other things, but it's gonna
Well,
be
he
interesting.
did the movies that he acted in. I actually went and saw the first one in person with Greg Sestero there.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that you
Yeah.
went to, like, a special you had to drive however far away to
No,
see.
it wasn't far away. It was in my town.
Really? It came
Yeah.
locally?
Yeah, he came to um, a small, like, little comic book slash it was like an indie, like, kinda hangout coffee shop place that showed screenings of movies sometimes, and they showed the premiere well, not the premiere, but the a ver one of the I can't remember the name, there was a it was a two-parter with
Yeah,
him and
it was called Best Friends.
Best Friends, yeah,
Best
and it
Friends
was
Volume 1 and Best Friends Volume 2
yeah,
came
I
out
went and
back to
saw
back
volume
years.
1 with Greg Sestero in the audience, so yeah.
I remember that when
Yeah.
they toured. That was 2017
He's touring
or around
again.
there.
He's touring again.
Well,
He was just back here at the same place recently.
really?
I
What were
believe
they
it
showing?
I believe it was The Room because it
Yeah, I
was
was gonna
the
say The Room
anniversary.
shows everywhere.
I think it was
I
an anniversary, right?
It's like a Rocky Horror
It's like
Picture
a
thing
20-year
now.
anniversary of The Room this year.
I believe it is 2003,
Yeah.
yes.
So he was around doing the rounds on that, but, God, we were going way down a fucking rabbit
Well,
hole
the
right
thing is
now.
well, give me
We
enough
s
time to look up when Jaws: The Revenge,
Okay,
is in
cool, that's what
continuity.
exactly what I was trying to do.
It is the 4th one.
I was fucking right.
So
God, we
Jaws
didn't even have to
3
go through all that.
I know,
I
we
was
went
just
on a whole
right at the
tangent for no
beginning.
reason. But back on track. Yeah, the Kino release of Big Man on Campus, um, I've never seen the film, so I don't know if I can't say to its quality,
Yeah,
and, it seems like a college type of, comedy, that's what it looks like to me.
gotcha.
Yeah. Oh, actually, no, it's not.
Sh
You wanna hear something
Lying
interesting? I'm gonna
again.
read this premise to you.
Okay.
In this version of The Hunchback of Notre Dame, a hunchback is found living in the bell tower of UCLA. He is put on trial and made to go through tests. One of the research doctors falls for him, and he falls for her in the end.
Holy
That's
shit.
not really quite the story of The Hunchback of Notre Dame, but it is a interesting '80s remix of it.
Wow. That actually sounds kinda cool.
How did no
It's
one notice that he was living up there?
these
It's
are
not
the
like
kind
a
of movies
church.
that I wanna see, guys. Damn, I kinda wish I'd have watched this before the show.
Yeah, I know.
Damn it.
I mean, this week has been quite a busy week because everything kind
Yes.
of dropped sequentially and then right at the end. But moving on the keynote list is last week we talked about the Audie Murphy Collection 2, and this week they decided to announce the Audie Murphy Collection
Trez.
3.
Trez. Uh,
Yes.
semicolon, the hell welcome to hell is the name of
Yes,
this set.
because the first movie is Hellbent for Leather, came out 1960. Second is Posse from Hell from 1961.
Yes.
And then the third film is just titled
Just
Showdown, which is a little
fucking
bit of a
ruin
letdown, when it comes to
ruins
the
it. Should have been
list.
called Showdown to Hell.
Uh, the reason why I like Posse from Hell is John Saxon is in it and Lee Van Cleef is in it,
Oh,
and so that just kind of gets me automatically interested. But yeah, if you have been, I mean, collecting these, actor or actress collector sets from Kino, you know exactly what the deal is. It's 3 Kino releases in a box, affordable.
they're usually around 30 bucks.
Yeah, usually around 20 to 30 bucks, perfectly fine. Nothing here has been listed in the way of special features or transfers or anything like that, it just says coming soon. I'm
Yeah.
assuming it's gonna come out later this year, because the first one's coming out in June, so I would expect this one to come out maybe in the fall. I
Yeah.
was spacing it out a bit, but that is it for Kino. Tangents aside, moving right along here, we have Eureka, but before I get to Eureka, there was another film that came out, called Meet John Doe. This is one that I think is being put out by Studio Canal. I have to actually relook this up because I saw this week and I was wondering if we had talked about this before, Steven, but I can't remember if we have.
I don't know,
Um,
it's one of them names of a movie that you feel like you've heard 1,000 times because
no,
John
you know
Doe.
what? It's not Studio Canal. It's Classic Flicks. Classic
Okay.
Flicks, I believe, is actually putting this out, and they were originally supposed to put this out like this past February. I don't think this release ever surfaced.
Hmm.
And fortunately, I guess they're going back and they're going to be putting out I think a 4K of this. And they've put out 4Ks of films before, specifically Eye the Jury. Eye the
Yeah.
Jury is I think their only 4K that they've done so far, if memory serves. And we talked a little bit about that when it came out. Do you remember that, Steven?
I remember
Did
that
you
us talking
did you
about
get to
I, the
see that?
Jury. No, I never watched it, no.
Oh, I thought you did for some reason. Yeah. Yeah, there's a 4K UHD coming, of this movie sometime in the future. There's already a clip of it that you can watch on YouTube of what the restoration looks like or what the restoration progress is. The reason why I mentioned this is a Frank Capra film,
Yeah.
and if you know anything about us, we're big Frank Capra fans, so this is kind of a no-brainer. I have to get this
I only
since
like
I
one
have
of
all
his
those
I
others.
only like It Happens One Night, I don't like any of his other movies.
Really?
I'm just kidding,
That's a rarity.
I'm just kidding. No, of course, there's a few other ones that I like. I mean, what's the one, with Jimmy Stewart? God, there's a few of them. Um,
It's a Wonderful Life?
if the one It's a Wonderful Life, he also did what's uh, Mr.
I
Wash
was almost gonna say, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington?
I can't speak. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, that's the other one. Um, yeah, Frank Capra's the kind of an
Yeah, Frank Capra's
all-timer.
an all-time great.
Yeah,
One of the movies that I really love is You Can't Take It With You, which came out
mm,
in 1938. That has a Blu-ray release as well. Um, Fantastic film. I think Lost Horizon's another one. All of these have gotten Blu-ray releases, I think directly from,
from Warner Brothers, yeah.
it was either Warner or Sony.
I got, they had you probably have some of the same things I have, them kinda
Yeah,
like,
it's the
digibook.
digibooks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was Sony
The
Pictures. Sony Pictures did
media
put out.
books, as they're called, the media
I
books.
don't like them being called media books. I don't know
Why?
why.
Why?
Media book just feels like too, I don't know, official? Maybe not official,
So
but
what's digital sound like to you? It sounds like something that it's not.
well,
Or digi means digital.
Digi's kind of indicated that it's small or truncated or abridged, which it is. It's kind of just if you get most digibooks, they're not like full on thick things. They're basically smaller than actual booklets or around the same thing
Well,
as
essentially,
booklets.
the book
Yeah,
in
it's
a
a
media
booklet.
book or a digibook is the booklet. It's just
Yeah, they just
attached.
combine into one.
Yeah, they just it's a compact version of the booklet and the case together.
Yeah, they don't
Um,
really put out a lot of those anymore.
Certain
There was
companies
that.
do. I know Wicked Vision is a company. I believe they're a German company that puts out a lot of media books or digibooks, as you like to call them. Um, that's
Yeah, I
kind of
remember.
their preferred thing.
I
Yeah.
guess I'm referring to most mainstream companies that don't do it anymore. Warner Brothers
No,
used to
no.
do it all the
Oh
time.
yeah, that's why I brought it up because them Capra films were I have them. I have the media
Yeah,
books.
and those were put out
Um,
by Sony, I think. When I'm thinking Warner Brothers, I'm thinking
when
they even
yeah,
did it for their mainstream, like
Mutiny
Dark
on the
Knight Rises. I
Mutiny
have
on
a
the
digibook version of that.
Mutiny on the Bounty. I have one of.
Yeah, I have
I
Mutiny on the
believe I have
Bounty.
Hamlet as well. The Kenneth
Mhm.
Branagh Hamlet.
I
Um,
have I think JFK came out in a digibook.
mm, a
I
lot of them
think
did. Yeah.
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest also came out in a
Yep.
digibook. That
Got
needs
that.
a 4K release, if that hasn't happened yet.
I want to say that's happened. If it
Maybe you're
happened,
right.
I feel like it's happened. If it hasn't, it's been announced.
Hold on,
Um,
maybe yeah, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's no, it hasn't happened yet.
oh, I feel like it should have.
I feel like if it was yeah, I'm surprised because of the 100-year anniversary thing they've got going on right now, and they announced all of those movies getting 4K releases, things like Maltese Falcon
Yeah.
and things like
It
that. I'm
it's gonna
surprised One Flew Over
happen.
the Cuckoo's Nest wasn't one of those.
It's gonna happen. It'll happen.
Hmm, perhaps.
But you
Uh,
don't
yeah.
they're gonna put out every fucking thing. It's
I
gonna
mean,
happen.
they should have done it already, that's what I'm saying.
Well, yeah, yeah, they should have done it besides re-releasing fucking movies that already have 4K releases in these sets. Stupid dumbasses. Um, sorry,
Very true.
I'm
Very
getting off the
true.
I'm drinking a lot of Dr. Pepper tonight, so I'm a little
Dr.
crazy right now.
Pepper. Um,
Um,
Moving on from there though, where were we? Yes, we were talking
Eureka.
about Meet John Doe.
Oh, so
Um,
well that yeah, yeah.
Meet John Doe, which actually came out right after Mr. Smith Goes to Washington in 1941. So if you've got all those other ones and you have them on your shelf, you can slot this right after that, which I
Yeah,
guess is nice for me. It was kind of an OCD collector like that. This film stars Gary Cooper and Barbara Stanwyck. Walter Brennan is in the film as well. Yeah, I'm.
got a
This is a buy for me. Just
got a
easy
pedigree
buy.
there. There's a pedigree
So
there. Yeah,
now we can move, I guess, to Eureka.
sure. Okay.
Eureka had 3 releases.
Yeah,
Steven, you wanna go through those?
I got them. June releases here from Eureka Entertainment. First one we have here is from 1989. Good year. The Lady Reporter. And that's of course starring Cynthia Rothrock, who's getting a lot of love lately. A lot of releases from her. I believe we had some stuff from Vinegar Syndrome, and I think Eureka maybe has put out something else from her recently too. Um, but the other ones we have here are, if my internet wants to, um,
Cooperate.
yeah, I'm trying to move between pages here, and it keeps messing up on me. The other one we have here is from 1964 called Revenge, and that's by it's written by, as you were telling me, I didn't realize it before I looked into it, is that it's written by the same director of Harakiri, which is Miyazaki Kobayashi. So that's got great pedigree there. I probably definitely need to check that out. And then the one that I actually did watch, we both watched, that was fucking fantastic, is a film called Samurai Reincarnation. Um, and this movie's fucking awesome, from 1981. Let's start there because we got to talk about this movie.
Yeah, quick
Uh,
quick correction. The writer of Revenge is Shinobu Hashimoto, and he wrote Harakiri, not the
oh,
director of Harakiri writing the script for
that's what
this.
I
I
meant.
just want you to
That's what I meant. Thank you for correcting me.
Yeah, I just wanted,
Uh,
just in case people are, like, confused, because
yeah,
the reason why I also wanted to mention this, he's also the writer for Rashomon, Ikiru, The Hidden
yeah.
Fortress. You're seeing a trend here. You see?
So things that are good.
Yes, like Seven Samurai.
Yeah,
So you see, and things
yeah,
like I think he wrote also did Samurai Rebellion, maybe? He did a lot of stuff, but
yeah.
those are chief among them. Um, so yeah, but back to Samurai Reincarnation. For those of you who are interested in watching this after we discuss it, it is streaming on Tubi as of right now. And this movie is kind of awesome. It
It's
is
awesome.
directed by the same person who directed Battle Royale.
Yeah.
So if you those of you who are fans of Battle Royale, um, you may want to check this out.
Kenji Fukasaku. I guess that's
That
how you say
yeah,
his name.
sounds
Um,
good.
so yeah, so the film, the description here: in the aftermath of a failed rebellion, as a Max, I don't even know why I'm trying to say these names.
Amakusa,
Amakusa Shiro is crucified, but returns as vengeance-filled demon with the power to resurrect the dead. Shiro uses his power to assemble a team of undead warriors, including legendary swordsman uh, Miyamoto
Miyamoto
Mazushi.
Musashi. Yeah,
God, why you make this so easy? And the only one who can stop them is the wandering samurai Yagyu Jubi, Sunny
Jobei.
Chiba. I'm just gonna say Sunny Chiba
He's
because that's.
Sonichiwa.
But it's yeah, it sounds as cool as it is. It's really like the set design and the characters and just the series of events, the way the story goes down is just really fascinating and just really inventive and just entertaining as
Yeah,
hell. I mean,
it's loosely based on real events where, like, during uh about 350 years ago, they say that there was an uprising of Christian samurais trying to take out the shogun, and they failed and were just massacred and, like, butchered, like thousands of them. And the movie opens with literally just like massacred battlefield of, like Steven said, like crucified bodies and severed heads and corpses. And
yeah,
it's but the style of it is done in this mystical fog type aesthetic where it's like they dialed up the fog machine to 1,000,000 and we're like, this is going to be like a
it's just the
ghost story,
shit.
really.
Yeah, I mean,
And
it gave me. Quieten vibes.
Yeah, it
You know,
feels like that.
yeah,
And the leader of this rebellion comes back from the dead as a basically a hellspawn demon,
yeah.
and he's gonna go around and resurrect certain people
Get the team
to
together.
to get a team together to enact revenge.
Yeah,
And he has this whole plan of how he's going to do it, and one of them happens to be Musashi. And Musashi's notable for me because one, Musashi was a real person, and two, because if you know the film, or I actually, if you know the trilogy, the samurai trilogy that's put out by Criterion, starring Toshiro Mifune, he plays Musashi, and it's
yeah.
about like it's loosely based on Musashi's life. It obviously takes a lot of liberalness and whatever and artistic license, but that is
Yeah.
what it's based on. And he's notorious for being an all-time great swordsman. He developed the dual wielding sword method and stuff like that, and he's in this movie. And they also like show like other like legendary Japanese cultural figures. Like Jobei is another one. He's actually like the son of a bit of a rival of Musashi, or like an adversary of Musashi, and they end up they end up having a duel in this film that's awesome. The
Oh, it's
climax of
amazing.
this movie is awesome. I love the mystical supernatural elements of this film. It's just an awesome movie. It really is, and
It,
it's not overly long. It's just
it's right around two
incredibly
hours.
engaging.
Yeah, and what I also like is that the people that all the people he brings back from the dead to be on his team, they all kind of have their own thing going too. It's not just like they're doing their bidding for him, but they're all kind of dealing with their own kind of things where they're kind of still living with the things that they dealt with in their past life, and
Yeah, they all have
specifically,
like a regret or like a life thing that they didn't get to fulfill,
yeah,
and that's why they ultimately say, "Yes, I want to be resurrected as a demon,"
yeah,
essentially,
yeah.
as and it's
So they're not just
incredible.
slaves to this demon. They do like they say yes to come back, but then they still are dealing with their issues from their past life. So it's like they're kind of like these like wandering like angry kind of like demons that are still trying to deal with things, like not just be a weapon, Um, so it's fascinating. It's a fascinating story, just stylish and well directed, and just a cool story. It's like almost something I would want to see a graphic novel be made of.
Mm,
It'd be
yeah,
that kind of thing. That it would be great in print form as well.
yeah,
Um,
and um, Sonny Chiba is fantastic in this
yeah,
film. This has already been released in the Sonny Chiba collection that's put out by Shout Factory. It's part of that set, but I don't think that set really has anything in the way of special features other than I think a career retrospective interview type thing with Sonny Chiba himself. I know that's on there, but but I think as as on disc special features for this release or for this movie specifically, they don't have really anything. And it's not like this set is also stacked itself, but at least they've got something. They've got a new audio interview. They have a new interview with filmmaker Kenta Fukasaku, who is the son of Kinji Fukasaku. Kinji Fukasaku died in 2003 while he was making Battle Royale 2, and his
yeah.
son Kenta Fukasaku had to finish making that movie. Um, and so they interview him, and then there's also an audio commentary on it. So at least there's something more
There's
than you
something.
get on the Shout Factory release.
But
Yeah,
Eureka releases are always nice and affordable, and if you're just going for this particular movie, this would be the way to go, unless you want all them other films that are in that Chiba set.
and to
Um,
be honest,
you know,
I got a feeling that if this one's coming out, all of the other ones may get releases
may
by
find a way. Yeah, yeah,
either Arrow, 88, or Eureka are
yeah.
probably going to end up putting those out. So if you have that set already, maybe you don't have to buy this because it could perhaps be the same transfer. This
I'm
does say
sure
a
it
new
is.
2K
Yeah,
restoration of the film,
yeah.
and I'm pretty sure that may have had the same restoration. Don't quote me on that. Um, but yeah. So, but the other films in here, Revenge, I really wanted to watch, but this movie is about as hard to find as any film I think we've ever talked about on here. Just you can't. It's not streaming anywhere. I think the only way you can get is probably on DVD, and that's about it. The reason why I want it is because of that connection to all of those other great films, and because it just looks awesome. Tony Stella did the artwork for the cover of this, and he took kind of the original poster art and he changed it up a little bit. But yeah, it's gorgeous, gorgeous cover art here. This getting a new 2K restoration, new interview with Tony Raines, who we've seen pop up on different things. And then the last film here is the Cynthia Rothrock starring Lady Reporter, or Blonde Fury, as its alternate title is called, which is I think is a better title than Lady Reporter. What do you think, Steven?
They both kind of suck.
Oh,
Um,
Blonde Fury is kinda cool.
I guess. I don't
Um,
know.
but yeah, this is actually has 2 cuts of the film, the theatrical cut as well as an export cut of the film. I think the export cut is shorter, and that's why it's, like, I guess, shorter for overseas markets, but this is getting a host of new features. Uh, a new select, scene commentary with Cynthia Rothrock, an interview with her that's brand new, 2 new commentaries, and another interview on here. This is a pretty loaded special features package. So yeah, this is once again a small but solid slate from Eureka. Dig it.
That's what they do. Well, let's move on over to, should we do partners
Arrow?
labels or Arrow? Arrow?
Arrow. Yeah,
Let's
Arrow.
do Arrow.
But
All
we're
right.
still yeah, we're in England, we might as well stay there.
Okay.
So we've got a slate here that's a mix match. Mix match? Yeah, we'll go with that. A
Sure.
mix and match of upgrades plus new stuff. First up here is the Game Trilogy, and this is a trilogy by Toru Morikawa. And these films are The Most Dangerous Game, The Killing Game, and The Execution Game.
A lot of
Next up,
games. A lot of
a lot
games
of
being
game
played.
going on here.
Yeah.
Well, I'll get into it because I did get to see all 3 of those. But next up is Waterworld, the 4K UHD upgrade. If you remember a few years ago, they put out Waterworld in a big limited deluxe edition, which Steven, did you end up getting that?
No.
I thought you
So
did.
I
You're a big
didn't.
Kevin Costner guy.
I
I thought
am.
you did.
I am. But yeah, no, I never got around to this one. I love Kevin Costner, but it's like I've seen his movies. It's like, so many times. It's like it's almost becomes complacent to me. It's like I don't own the Rocky movies at all because I've seen them all like 50 times. Because they're in
That
my
does
head.
still surprise me.
I know, right? It surprises me too, but I don't own the Rocky movies, even though I've seen them so many times.
Okay, understandable. Understandable. Yeah, that original release, the Blu-ray release came out in 2019, so it was a little bit before we started chasing labels here. But I remember when that came out. And this release, similar to that release, has like 3 cuts of the film,
Yeah.
loads of special features. Obviously, I think the only cut here that's actually in 4K is the theatrical cut. So don't think you're getting 3 cuts of the movie in 4K. You're not. The other 2
Yeah.
are just on Blu-ray. At least they're on their own discs. You got theatrical cut, the TV cut, and the Ulysses cut. And this is a 3-disc edition. Um, for those of you who bought the Blu-ray, you're a bit upset because now you may have to upgrade, but that seems to happen a lot. But after that is a much welcomed upgrade, at least for me personally, and that is The Lighthouse. The Robert Eggers film is getting a 4K UHD upgrade. Coincidentally, it literally just got a 4K UHD upgrade directly from A24, and they're like limited edition that you can only get
Well,
through their website store, which they've done with several releases. I think
now,
they
now
did
I
with
know what you're saying. I
Midsommar.
know what you're saying by upgrade, but if we're being more exacting here, this hasn't come out by these companies yet. So in general, it's an upgrade, but it's not an upgrade for something that Arrow's already put out. Um,
No, no, it's an
yeah,
upgrade in the sense that
it's the
It
first
was
4K.
only available it was
Yeah,
only available on Blu-ray pretty much for the last couple of years, and then just now it's getting a 4K upgrade from
yes,
someone somewhere.
yeah,
A24 did it here literally just this week. I think it came out like
yes.
March 28th from directly from their store, and then this is coming out in a couple of months. So, but it's a welcome upgrade because the movie I think is going to probably looks amazing in 4K.
Well, the big advantage to this one is that there's actually features,
Yes,
special features.
I think I have the Blu-ray, and I can't remember if it actually came with any features.
But that even that 4K from A24, I don't really think has anything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I would honestly have to check. But this one, it comes with like good features. Like I believe I believe people we know are on here.
I know Cat Ellinger's a
Yeah,
part
Cat. I
of
was just
one
gonna
of
say Cat
these.
Ellinger did some writing in here, and Alexandra Heller Nicholas as well, both in the limited edition 60-page book.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
So
it's this is going to be the one. I'm buying this one.
oh, okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I'm not
forget
buying
about the
that
other one.
A24 one. Yeah, I'm not buying that.
All right,
Um,
understandably so. But moving on from there, we've got Mallrats getting a 4K UHD upgrade, upgrading the Arrow Blu-ray edition that came out a couple of years ago, that I
that
have in my collection.
you waited a long time to buy it, and then you finally bought it, and then now there's this one.
Yeah, I think I've had it for like, I don't know, 2 years.
It's it's not a movie that really needs a 4K, I feel like,
Which I
but
thought was a little interesting because
yeah,
that one had already had like an upgrade from the previous Blu-ray that was available. You know what I mean? So that Blu-ray that came out from Arrow looked better than the previous Blu-rays we have had before. I believe also Scott Sazlo worked on this release. He worked on the original release, so I think his
yeah,
work is carrying over onto this one.
yes,
So that's pretty cool. Um, yeah, I love Kevin Smith. I love his work. Unapologetically, I own, like I said, the Blu-ray of the Arrow release. Um, I don't know if I need to upgrade to this right away, or because there's
at
nothing new
all.
on here in terms of features other than the new 4K restoration. Unless the 4K restoration does blow out that Blu-ray significantly, completely
Yeah,
blow it out of the water. But still,
yeah.
if you don't own it, if you don't own the movie, this is probably the
I don't own
best way to
it.
get it.
I don't think I own it. I mean, I don't know. I might have like a Blu-ray that's not the Arrow one, like a studio Blu-ray,
Yeah,
maybe.
Universal put it out on Blu-ray years ago, and it was a bit of a lackluster Blu-ray,
Yeah,
which is par for the course for Universal. I think it was part of when they were doing their decades slipcover retro editions. Like they had one for the 80s, one for the 90s, the
yeah,
2000s, and they were like these absurdly colorful, like tie-dye type slipcovers, which I'm sure many people have in their collections right now. Um, yeah, so I remember that being part of that. The second one, but another one here is Warriors 2. And this may sound familiar to people because Warriors 2 was put out by Eureka, I think about 2 years ago in a dual film edition, like a double feature with Prodigal Son. And I know
mm.
that because I have it and it's like right next to me.
I was
So,
gonna say, was it that long ago?
yeah, I think it was 2021, which I can't
Jesus
believe is 2
Christ.
years now. I mean, that's kind of wild to me. Uh That we've been one, that we've been doing this for that long, and two, that 2021 was 2 years ago. No, it was 2022, but it was January of 2022 that that came out. So I'm a little
Huh.
borderline there.
Huh.
But I'm assuming that Eureka has the Region B rights and the Region A rights are with Arrow. That's my assumption.
Maybe. Or, they were able, sometimes things are put in there. They make the deal to have to put things together in a package, and maybe that deal got broken or something. I don't know. But
Yeah.
yeah, I haven't seen it, so I don't know anything about it.
Now, I remember watching it when we discussed it upon the time, and I liked it enough to buy it. So,
Well,
yeah, I
I
believe
guess
Sammo Hung is
yeah,
in the film.
yeah.
Um, yeah, it's a Golden Harvest film. So if it, and I think the special features are pretty close to the Eureka ones. Um, when it comes to comparison's sake, I haven't done a side by side comparison, but it looks like the at least the at least the audio commentaries are similar. And there's a making of Warrior 2 featurette on the Eureka release, and there is um, and I think that's on here as well as archival. Yeah, I think it's the same special features. I really think it's the same ones. Maybe some archival interviews that aren't included in one are included on the other, but other than that, they're very, very similar releases. But lastly, here, and not least of all, is a big box set, Stephen. It's
Yes.
called Enter the Video Store Empire of Screams. And This is about Empire International Pictures, which was a distribution company in the 1980s. They only were around from like 1983 to like 1988, 89, around there. Um, they I think they've been bought and like they've been folded into other companies ever since, and all kinds of business BS that we really don't have to get into. But they put out a series of horror films that are rather kind of like cult horror films that people know, like Reanimator. I know they put out um, things like that. But this box set specifically has, I think, is it 5 films? Yes, 5 films. The Dungeon Master, Dolls, Cellar Dweller, Arena, and Robot Jocks.
Hmm.
Um, an eclectic, an
Yeah.
eclectic view of movies here. Some straight up horror, some just giant mecha robots fighting each other.
They're genre movies. It's
Very
essentially
much genre.
just a genre
Horror,
collection. Yeah.
sci-fi, throw a little fantasy in there. A little futuristic dystopia with robots fighting each other, a la Pacific Rim. You know Del Toro
Dude,
saw this. You know he saw that
if he
movie.
fucking didn't see that movie, then he must have had a dream. Something happened because that movie he literally
Dude,
takes.
Pacific Rim is literally combination of robot jocks and kaiju films
Yeah.
smashed together.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
exactly what
down
Del
to,
Toro did.
like, how they operate the robots and,
The fact that you
like,
go into them and, like,
there's, like, a
maneuver them.
pad that you stand on and you move and it moves
I
the
mean,
thing, like
yeah, and the Japanese, film industry was doing that kind of stuff since like the 70s or
sure.
even earlier, with giant mecha robots. And of course, anime was hugely influential in that as well, with Gundam Wing
Yeah.
and all kinds of other things that we ended up getting here, in so many different forms, like the Power Rangers.
Oh, yeah,
Literally,
yeah.
Power Rangers. The way that that was actually done is for the giant robot sequences and the action sequences. They took the footage from the original Japanese shows and put that on screen. That's what they used, and literally, it's robots fighting giant things. I mean, and that's what Robot Jocks is.
Well, yeah, it was that not if we're going through the films real quick,
Yes, yes.
so this Robot Jocks is a Stuart Gordon we just talked about Reanimator. Stuart Gordon, who directed Reanimator, directed this film, and, we were comparing it to, Pacific Rim. Funny enough, they talked about doing a sequel to this movie, and guess what would have happened in that sequel? Aliens were gonna come.
Oh, shocking.
So you would have probably had something a lot more similar, even more similar to what Pacific Rim would have eventually looked like, which is monsters fighting robots, in some way. So, yeah, I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah. And the premise for Robot Jocks, for those of you who are interested, is that in like some distant future, war is no longer a thing. And in order to like settle like war disputes or to go to war, is you have a champion essentially in a giant robot fighting the champion of another country in a giant robot.
Yeah.
And they fight each other, and the winner is the winner. That's kind of how it goes. And this movie kind of follows this young upstart who is kind of like up and coming fighter and all this kind of stuff. It's not a great movie. The acting's not good.
It's not, no,
Dialogue's
it's
not
not
good.
great, but
Story's not
honestly,
great.
it's entertaining though. It's
Yeah.
like not boring at all. Like it's
It's
like,
very much a product of its time, but
yeah,
charmingly so.
yeah,
But the
yeah.
other films in this collection, I don't know how many you got to see,
Well,
Steve. You
I
got to
watched all of them, but the first one, which was Dungeon Master. We can start
Okay.
with Dungeon Master
I
since
did
I
get to see
haven't
the
seen it.
Dungeon Master.
Yeah,
So the Dungeon Master, the premise of this film is that there's this guy who's like this futuristic computer tech geek essentially, and and he ends up getting roped into like this intergalactic set of trials where there's this, I don't know, this guy who comes from some distant galaxy, comes to challenge him to this great game where he sets him into these different quote unquote dungeons or levels. It's kind of like playing a live action video game where he gets put in these different arenas and he's got to complete a certain task. And usually, this certain task is actually saving his girlfriend in each of these scenarios. Like he gets put in like a heavy metal concert with, you know, the band Wasp? They make a cameo in this movie.
Yeah, I don't know who
This,
that is.
oh, the 80s heavy metal band. Um they make a cameo in this movie and he gets put into like one of their concerts and he's got to like find his girlfriend in it and like save her from something. There's this one scenario where he gets put into like an urban setting and there's a killer on the loose and he's got to save his girlfriend who's going to get murdered. And it's kind of like an homage to like a Gialli type of thing going on. And it's like different, like, and then there's like some fantasy stuff where he gets put in like a cave and he's got to fight a monster and save her and things like that. So each segment is directed by a different director, which
Yeah.
is kind of the uniqueness of it. But yeah, that is the Dungeon Master.
Yeah. 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 Sounds interesting, I guess. Enough. I don't know. Um, but I did get to watch the rest of these dolls, which I think recently got a single release from somebody else, I believe.
Yeah,
Was it?
so the both the Dungeon Master and Dolls was released by Shout Factory many
Okay.
moons ago. By many moons, I mean I think Dolls came out in 2014 through Screen Factory, and the Dungeon Master came out in a double feature release in 2015. They're both out of print now because
I
this
could have
release is
sworn Dolls got a single release recently.
did it?
We
Let me
should,
look.
yeah, let's please look because I feel like I saw the cover for this before this announcement, like it recently got a release somewhere.
Let's see. Dolls got a release, like I said, 2014 in the UK. No, well, it's,
No,
2021, it got a release in Germany, on Media Book.
I don't know. I don't know where I saw it then, but
Same
so
thing with
yeah,
France, but
yeah.
yeah,
So,
that's about it.
but Dolls is about this young girl who's with her, I guess her father and her, I guess eventual stepmother, who's kind of he's kind of with this rich woman that is a bitch, and so he's taking her for the summer, and so they're driving, I guess, back to where they live, and on the way back they break down, and nearby is this rundown mansion, and from there just craziness ensues. These two old people that that live there have there's obviously something going on with them, and you slowly start to find out that the dolls in the house are all alive. So it's got a little bit
Yes.
of this puppet master esque kind of thing about it, but
Yeah.
it kind of goes a little further than that.
What is
It's a little bit more weirder
yeah,
than that.
also directed by Stuart Gordon. So Stuart
Yeah,
Gordon directed 2 out of 5 of these films in the set. Um, it's tonally a very interesting movie because it feels both like fun and comedic and
yeah.
like something.
It's got a playfulness to it that I
But some of the
like.
murders are straight up vicious. Like,
Yeah.
straight up,
Dude,
this movie
the
is this supposed to be for kids or
no,
not?
no, I don't think so.
But, like,
Um,
there are moments where we're like, our protagonist is a child. So it's like, is it supposed? I don't know. It's got that weird 80s dark and light vibe to it, that is truly unique to its time. But I thought it was fine. I yeah, it's fine to me.
I enjoyed it.
You did dig it?
I
Did you dig it? It's a short
yeah,
film. The movie's like 75
yeah.
minutes long.
It's a fun little watch. I mean, I it's
Yeah, I like the
something
little
that
animatronic dolls and stuff. Dolls are
yeah.
just kinda creepy in general.
Well, they're
Let's be
creepy
honest.
because I mean, I don't want to give away every little element of the story, but
Mm.
it's there's just they're just it's fun. It's a fun little short little watch that I could definitely go back to it and watch it again. Um, the
But
next one,
what did you think of Cellar Dweller? That's what I
yeah,
wanted to.
Cellar Dweller, uh, cool concept. Not really exactly like it fully. I feel like it wasn't fully envisioned greatly.
I feel
Um,
you.
but it's definitely kind of a cool concept of like this an ability to like create things, and then kind of like a Goosebumps thing, what eventually what Goosebumps would do in the Goosebump movies, where Arl Stein, played by Jack Black, will create these things, and then the thing creations will come to life, kind of thing. And in this story, that there's this monster that this illustrator creates that keeps coming alive and killing people. Um, Cool. It's cool, and the monster's kind of cool. Um, It's okay. It's fine. Um,
Yeah, it's basically it's one of those. It did feel more like a concept for a television series than it felt like for a movie.
it felt like kind of like a
Almost like a
it almost felt Stephen King
yeah, a little
because
bit. Where
of the whole writer or illustrator thingy. It felt
yeah,
like
so
a
there's this comic. The movie starts off with this comic book writer, or drawer, and artist, if you will. He creates this monster, then comes to life and kills him. And then years later, another artist kind of moves into the same space and accidentally yeah, like reinvents or re-earths this monster creature and end up starts killing people in the house that she's living in with all these other artists in it. And that's the premise of the movie. It's kind of it.
it's yeah, it's not got much there in the sense of story. I mean, maybe
Yes.
there's some thematic elements that we missed out on,
Eh, I
but you
mean,
know, it's a
kind of
it's okay.
straightforward.
It's pretty straightforward and it's okay. It's not. It's definitely like lower tier for this set. I feel like. I mean, I think it's better than
You
the
think it's
next
better?
one we're.
I
I
was
think
going
it's
to
better
ask
than
you,
the next one.
is it better than Arena, which is the
It's better
next
than
one?
Arena. I can't. I didn't like Arena.
Oh my! Did you ever wonder what Rocky would be like in space? 'Cause,
No,
but 'cause that's Arena.
because Arena's not good.
Arena is the type of movie that they would watch on Mystery Science Theater 3000 and just
Yeah,
rip to shreds. It reminded
yeah.
me a lot of those types of sci-fi movies that they watched. Um, yeah, like,
I
goodness gracious.
honestly, I really had a hard time finishing that movie.
I got through it,
I
and so the premise of this, for those of you interested in what we're referencing here, it takes place all on a space station in some future, and on the space station, they've got, like, a whole boxing like, a space boxing thing going on where, like, different creatures from different, galaxies, like, fight each other in a boxing match, and yet again, this is another one where this up and coming, human is taking on all of these other aliens and stuff, and, of course, there's, like, organized crime going on and and all kinds of things like that, and that's kind of the premise of the movie. It's cheesy, it's a B movie, it's not great, it's
I mean
ridiculous, it's absurd.
I'm usually okay with stuff like that, but I think it was just, you know, it reminded me so much of, like, and you don't hate me, Trekkies, like a crappy Star Trek
Oh,
show.
its setting was like if Star Trek was terrible. Um,
Is it? Are you sure? Wait, are you sure Star Trek isn't just bad?
no, it's not. No, no, God, no. No,
I
God,
mean,
no.
because this reminded me of some Star Trek episodes that
Yeah,
I've watched before.
well,
Um,
this is like a low budget, like, it looks like lower budget than television Star Trek. Like, it's something like on that
I don't
level.
know. It just yeah, it just really didn't. I don't get in like in theory I like things that have a bunch of like practical effects and like you know, but it just was so low budget that
I think the
it was
effect if anything, the practical effects were the best part, was for some of the alien
nah.
designs and stuff
I
like
mean
that.
the design is good, but the suits are not
Yeah,
good.
it was too low budget, there was no and the acting is not good, and it's just it's not great. It's probably
It
the
was
worst movie in the box set,
it's
to
the
be
worst
honest.
movie in the box set,
I
honestly,
mean,
for
I if I
me.
had to rank these, um,
I mean,
damn.
I would say if I had to rank these, I'd say I mean, I didn't see Dungeon Master, so I
Yeah, you
can't
have to
use that one. But I would say Dolls is the top one, Robot Jocks, Cellar Dweller, Arena,
yeah,
you
I'd
know,
probably
and
go what did you put on top? Dolls?
Dolls.
Yeah, Dolls is probably the most interesting and probably the most well done, than Robot Jock just for the sheer concept.
Yeah,
Um, the
Cellar
Dungeon
Dweller.
Master, then Cellar
For you,
Dweller, then
yeah,
Arena.
okay.
Yeah,
So
that's the
if
level.
maybe if I saw that, I would be right around the same spot.
Yeah, because Dungeon
But
Master is not bad. The problem with the Dungeon Master for me is it has like next to nothing when it comes to a first act. Like its first
yeah,
act is probably 10 minutes, and
yeah,
you're thrust into the description of what I just told you, the trials, within the first 20 minutes of the movie. Like not even. Like
yeah,
we go from like 0 to 60 very quickly. Like he goes to bed one night and then all of a sudden he meets this guy and then he gets thrust into this thing he's gotta go through. And I'm
yeah.
like, "There was no setup to this at all. We're just going into it." Um, but I kind of like the concept of that. It's kind of a cool idea of having someone direct distinctly different sequences in a film.
Yeah.
Almost anthological, but obviously the whole thing connects with an overarching story. But let's move away from Arrow.
Before we do, we
Oh,
need to
yes.
fully give the
Yeah,
this whole
forgot.
set here is a nice box here, and it's like a video store, and I love the art on it. I love that it kind of shows a little bit of a something from each movie in the art, and it looks like once again another box set that won't fit on the shelf. Nice, um,
Well, it does
but
look like it's gonna come, like each movie's gonna get its own individual case,
for sure,
and they're all gonna come on, like, just put in a box together, but it is coming with a lot of swag with it, and also each movie is getting its own, uh, special features, own
sure,
stuff
yeah.
going on. We're getting 15 postcards. There's an Arrow Video Store membership card, which is a nice
Which
touch.
I like that, yeah.
Reversible sleeve art as well. The artwork is newly commissioned. Each of them are getting a 2K restoration except for Cellar Dweller, which just says additional picture restoration. I don't know what that means. Um, but yeah, each of them are getting a new commentary. Each of them are getting special features in there. So yeah, this is a pretty deluxe box set from Arrow.
Yeah, I
Um,
believe Scott did some work on this,
okay.
design work, and then, I did mention on Twitter, Maddie and, Dave from, the guys from the Schlock Pit that we interviewed back in the day,
Oh yes.
did a lot of, work on this. They did some
Oh
commentaries
yes. I did. I mean, I am seeing
on the
them
f
here.
yeah, a few of these. So, they put a lot I believe that they said they were, like, consultants on this set.
Yeah, it looks like they've got. Yeah, they've got, yeah, on Cellar Dweller, on Arena, they did some work. Um, I can't I'm just literally looking at it very quickly, but at least those 2 releases, um, yeah,
Yeah. So
so
that
cool.
yeah, they did a commentary
Oh,
for Dungeon
and, the
Master.
Dungeon Master.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
did see
So
that.
they're all over this set, and they were apparently consultants on it. So, and they're the guys. I mean, they love this type of
These
stuff.
are
So
schlocky movies, and
yeah,
that's literally their thing.
yeah. So
But now we can officially move on from Arrow to what dropped, as of this recording, yesterday, and that is Vinegar Syndrome. Yes, the first of the month has arrived, and it was April Fool's Day, and there was no fooling going around with
I
this
don't know.
slate
They
of
fooled
releases.
me a little bit.
I'm gonna
Uh,
tell you, Steven, for the first time ever in my life, I think I officially hate April Fool's Day. I don't know why.
why?
I didn't like all the trickery that was going on. Maybe I'm
I
just too
know.
serious of a person now, where I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't have time for this
Sometimes
nonsense.
people drop shit, and you're like, "Oh, that's exciting," and then you realize, "Damn it, this is probably a lie."
Yeah, and it's
Um,
like, I don't have time for this nonsense. I got
yeah.
come on.
But
I don't know. But
it,
Vinegar
once
Syndrome didn't
again,
really do that.
no, no. This is just the partner labels. We were
No,
just talking
they
about here.
released regular stuff.
Yeah, but didn't we already talk about that stuff?
No, no,
I
this is
thought we
brand new
talked about
stuff.
that. Oh yeah, I'm thinking about the flash sale shit
Yeah, you think about
from
flash
last time.
sale
That's what
stuff.
I'm
This
thinking
is
about.
brand spanking new.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about now.
Yeah, you actually watched one of them.
I know I did. You know what? I got a baby, man. I say this all the time.
Yeah.
It sucked the energy out of you. I
To
don't
be
really want
honest, Steven, you do not sell Parenthood very well.
it's terrible.
I'm
It's
t
why I don't even know why the fuck I did it.
I'm going to be honest, the worst sellers for parenthood or becoming a parent in any way are people who have children. You just observe their life for a good 10 minutes and you're like, "Yeah, that's not really for me." That's my gist about it.
Yeah,
W
well, it has its ups and downs, but
right, but
it's for the most part it's great. But
I'm just saying in
it's
general, what really turns me off is seeing my friends and family members that I've known for a long time go from single to relationships to marriage or parenthood, whatever comes first or whatever happens. And it's just like, and you can see the ups and downs, and it's like, do the good, for your, and then you can make a reference onto yourself about whether that's something you want. And it's never really something that's, looks
well, you're never really
appealing to
gonna know
me.
until you're never really gonna know until you do it.
And
So
then that's also the thing too, is that you do really never truly know. But what you do really know is that Vinegar Syndrome every first of the month is going to give you a
some
ton of
shit.
stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
We've got a couple of things here. Curse of the Blue Lights,
Mm.
five woman for the Killer. No, Five Women for the Killer. Vacation of Terror 1 and 2. And then from their newest sub-label is, The Cat Creeps, and then Picorama is Climax/Wet Dreams. And Steven,
Jeez.
yeah, yeah. Steven, I know
That's
you got to
pretty
see Curse of the Blue
straightforward.
Lights.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, that Picorama titles are pretty straightforward there.
Yeah,
Uh,
they don't really they don't hide what they're
Climax,
about.
Wet
Slash Wet
Dreams.
Dreams.
Yeah,
Um, I know you got to watch The Curse of the Blue Lights,
yeah.
and you weren't a big fan of it.
It's it's not great. Um, it's like a kind of a different take on the zombie kind of monster movie. Honestly, it's kind of like a almost a kid friendly monster movie. It kind of you could almost pair it with something like Monster Squad.
Oh,
That's how
that's the vibe?
friendly it is. That's how I mean, it's not quite that vibe, but it's like friendly. It's like safe in that way. Like it's not really gory. It's not you know, it's like the monsters talk to each other. They're like they're not just like going around like "Ugh," you know, like they're not zombies like that. They like talk to each other. They're like their own characters. It's like watching like some kind of like shitty TV program about
Interesting.
monsters. It's not great. I honestly, I mean, I'm sure some people might find this movie charming. I just didn't. It just didn't really. It wasn't for me. Um, it's a little bit too for a movie that's this low budget. I mean, it is got some interesting makeup effects and things like that, but um, just for sometimes these movies, though they're very low budget, I understand that they're maybe just a little bit too simple and quirky for me. I mean, this just didn't work for me. Um,
Okay. I mean,
so
I have to take your word for it because all I got to see when it came to to this crop of films, I saw The Cat Creeps. That Cat Creeps being part of the Vinegar.
which is one I was interested in because I like that idea for that label because it's kind of delving into mostly, I guess, classic cinema genre, classic cinema that
It is. It's like
yeah
almost like kind of like classic B movies, really,
yeah
which is a
yeah
really fascinating thing to get into. Yeah, the Vinegar Syndrome Labs thing. This film is not great. It's okay. Um, It's came out in 1946. There was actually a 1930 version that came out, and apparently that's a lost film. Like they don't have anything left that's intact from it, from what I was reading. This is the third release from the Vinegar Syndrome Labs release sub-label, and this is um it's an interesting kind of murder mystery investigative type of deal going on here, where there's this woman who was Yeah, there's this murder that took place, I think, many, many years ago involving a politician who's up for reelection. I think he's a senator or something, and it could derail his entire um, campaign reelection. And they decide that it's him, like it's him and, like, the police as well as and journalist and a detective, that are going to kind of investigate about, like, the origins of this release, and there may be, like, a $200,000 payoff that may have been involved with a murder that occurred, many, many years ago. Um, the film is absurd because I don't know if this is real. Was there ever $1,000 bills ever printed? I don't
uh
know.
who knows. I mean, I'm sure you know it wouldn't surprise me. It
I
would not
because, like,
surprise
there
me.
seems to be $1,000 bills in this film, and I'm like, "Ah, it's a little wild." But I'll read the premise here just so it's a little easier for people to digest because, to be honest, the version I saw of the film is in probably the poorest public domain quality I've seen in quite some time. So trying to figure out what the heck was going on in this film from time was a little difficult. So when a wealthy widow sends a $1,000 bill to the local newspaper claiming murder, blackmail, a corrupt politician, and $200,000 fortune to be had, it's up to reporter Terry Nichols and photographer Pidge Flash Laurie to figure out the nefarious plot and clear the politicians, who's this guy's soon-to-be father-in-law, is to clear his name. But they won't be alone. Come among the colorful cast of characters are Terry's beautiful fiance, a lawyer with his feline phobic secretary, Yeah, his lawyer with a with his feline phobic secretary. Wow,
Holy
that's a
crap.
word. A very deceiving private detective, and finally a mysterious woman and her even strange black cat, which may be involved with the murders itself. Um, from director Eerie C. Kenton, who directed House of Dracula, The Ghost of Frankenstein, and Island of Lost Souls, which I
Mm,
believe is the Criterion film starring
yes.
Charles Laughton, which is a take on the Island of Dr. Moreau. And this does have kind of a Doctor of Island of Dr. Moreau vibe to it because it's set on an island. With the cast of characters, a lot of fog going around, a lot of it all takes place at night in like one location. It's got that vibe to it, but the problem is the story um is kind of okay. It's not great. The movie is literally like 58 minutes long, so it's barely a feature length film, and you kind of get what you get all you can get in it. Um yeah, and it's a murder mystery really. It tries to I don't know why they tried to play this movie up as if it's like a horror film. I guess the only horrific thing happening in it is that there's a murder that took place at one point, and then sometimes during the film, another murder occurs. But they made it seem as if this cat was possessed by the soul of a woman who dies in the film, and I never. It was odd. They kind of just wedged that in there.
Hmm.
But I'm going off on a rant here, but that's the Cat Creeps. Um, it's okay, it's not great. You do get a new commentary on here. You do get something with author critic Kim Newman discussing cats in classic horror films. There's a lot of cats in classic horror films. Did you ever
Yeah.
notice that, Steven?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
Cat
Yeah.
People, Curse of the Cat People, stuff like that.
You know,
But yeah, that's the Cat Creeps.
Pet Cemetery.
Pet Cemetery is another one. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was The Leopard Man, which I think was a
Yeah.
Val Lewton produced film.
Yeah.
But yeah,
They're everywhere.
they're everywhere. I don't know what it is, why they're so creepy. Um, but moving
I
on,
don't know. I have one in this fucking room, and
I know, say
fucking he's always
I
creepy.
I've never had a pet cat. I've always had pet dogs. But moving on, let's go to the partner labels because they decided to drop 16 partner labels on us
Jesus
this
Christ.
week.
Oh,
Um,
all right. I got you.
it's a go on.
Yeah.
It's a
Um,
Rolodex here. It's a Rolodex.
as I'm doing the cross symbol around my chest, so I can go through this. Um, so from partner label XYZ Films, we have Something in the Dirt. From Yellow Veil Pictures, we have the Hourglass Sanctorum. From partner label Canny, we have Bullets Over Summer. From Utopia Distribution, we have The Civil Dead. From Factory 25, we have the Full Moon Trilogy, which includes films Silver Bullets, Art History, and The Zone. From Circle Collective, we have The Great Bison. From VHS Hitfest, we have Justice Ninja Style, which I like that title. From Dark Star Pictures, we have Krat. From AGFA, we have Lady Street Fighter. From Saturn's Core Audio Video, we have Red Cockroaches. From Canadian International Pictures, we have Speaking Parts. From Big World Pictures, we have Taming the Garden. From Deaf Crocodile Films, we have Time of Roses. And from ETR Media, we have Vinyl Nation. And from Altered Innocence, we have The Wounded Man. And from AGFA, we have The Zodiac Killer. 16 movies.
Yeah, and unfortunately, they decided to drop these on the first, which occurred on a Saturday, and we
Yeah,
record on Sunday. So we had
yeah,
literally one day to watch as many of these as possible,
sure,
which
yeah.
killed me because my one job here on the podcast is to watch movies, and I wasn't able
Well,
to get to a lot of them.
I mean, that's the job you've taken on, Andrew. You could do more. Like
That's all I can do. I mean, I got that's all I got the energy and the willpower to do is to watch movies. But I'll say this: the movies I did get to watch, um, one of the best ones is The Wounded Man, by Altered
it's great.
Innocence.
It's great, yeah.
It's I mean, I didn't get to see all of the ones on this list here, but it's gonna be hard. It's a hard movie to top on this list.
Yeah, I mean, like, just kinda going through the films and kinda looking into what they're all about, um, I can't honestly we obviously can't give recommendations, and really speak to most of these, but, I will say out of the interest, just at a surface level interest, The Wounded Man ended up kind of being the just on the surface, the one that interested me the most, and then we watched it, and I was like, "Okay, yeah, it's fantastic." And so going into that one, so Alternate Innocence, it's from Alternate Innocence, and it's about Henry, who's this frustrated teen living with his parents in a French coastal town, and when they drag him to the train station to bid adieu to his sister, Henry sneaks off to a secluded bathroom and interrupts a hustler named Jean, um, satisfying the masochist desires of an older male client. Henry falls desperately in love with this sexy criminal, but Jean evades Henry's affections. Under you know under Undertiered Henry shadows Jean as he travels the dark and dangerous underbellies of the sleepy village. So it's this film that follows this young man who is kind of seems he's a kind of a frustrated, he has frustrated sexually, he's a homosexual, he's trying to, he of course doesn't know, he doesn't talk to anybody about this, and so then he kind of falls for this guy who ends up being a criminal, and then starts to kind of like want to, to get closer to him, he wants to be like him, he starts wanting to
Yeah.
get involved in things, and he struggles back and forth with that love, and like the things that he's like willing to do for that love and stuff like that. It's really, really dramatic movie,
And the
you know.
what is interesting about that is it is very much kind of, I don't know if the proper term is unrequited, but it's that love where you love someone and that love is not reciprocated back to you, yet you
Yeah,
still
yeah.
keep going for it. I felt that a
It
lot in this
the
film.
love of something that you can't have, that
Really,
kind of.
or it's even like a love that you dream up in your head, which is not reality. Like you
Yeah,
almost build
yeah.
it up to be something that it's not. This film has a lot of that in it. And what is also interesting is that he goes further and further into this really seedy, unsafe world of
Like,
yeah,
essentially
like kind of like
prostitution in a way.
essential prostitution, but like unsafe prostitution. Like it like
It's not like he doesn't have like a pimp or anything. He's just kind of
you just kind of
roaming the streets
roaming the streets at night looking
like
and there's a point in this film where they openly discuss that idea and it's not even he's not even getting sexual gratification from it.
yeah.
Which is also interesting to me. There is so much to unpack with this movie that we can't do here without spoiling it or
No,
spending a
no.
whole show on it. But this movie was incredibly gripping to me because it's existential, it's deeply thematic, it is about, so many things, about
Beautifully acted. Just
fantastically acted, a lot of acting with
yeah,
no dialogue whatsoever, just body language, looks, and motion, and all those things, and the environment of the world in which he lives in just speaks loudly for itself. It's an exploration of unknowing sexual desire,
yeah,
it's about sexual repression and expressing that sexual repression in like, not violent ways, but just, like, exploding of sexual, urges, and then bringing
yeah,
it back in, and then exploding again, and it's just like, what is that emotional toll? How far does that take you? Where does that take you? The movie is incredibly gripping because I didn't know what was gonna happen moment to moment. All the characters that you meet in this world are so very much a part of it, like, you believe that they exist in this universe.
yeah,
Yeah, this movie is incredible. So this is
yeah.
The Wounded Man from 1983. It's got a similar grit and vibe to Steven, what were you saying before the show?
Mike Lee's Naked. I
Mike
kind of
Lee's
compared it.
Naked, it's got
Yeah,
that type of dirty grit to it that just gets underneath you, and it's so unnerving throughout the entire
yeah.
runtime. so
Yeah,
unnerving.
and
Yeah,
this is a French film.
it
It's
is a
in
French film,
French.
so you will have to read subtitles, but
Yeah,
it
yeah, but
is when it comes to extras in here, just quickly, there's a video essay by Robert Payne. There's a 32-page booklet in here as well. Um, yeah, there's another video essay in here about Out of the Shadows: Criminalization of Sex Work in L'Homme Blessé, which is the French title of the film. Um, yeah, it's a fantastic movie. But we got to see some other stuff in here. Specifically, we got to see the Canadian International Pictures release of Speaking Parts. And
yes.
Steven and I both had a little bit of differentiating view on the
Okay.
film. I can tell you this right now.
Yeah.
This thing sold out quick.
It's gone, guys.
It's
It's I
not
mean,
gone yet, but it's down to 353 copies of the standard edition. So the
yeah.
limited edition is gone,
The
gone.
the the 1,000 limited editions that were on the site are gone. I mean, there'll probably be some that go out to some retailers, so you'd have
Obviously,
to
yeah.
jump on them quick,
Orbit
but,
Orbit DVD will get it, Diabolic will get it, Grindhouse will get it,
and they'll
other
get it
places
for,
will get
like,
it.
about a day, and it'll be gone.
Probably less, probably less.
Hours.
I think the
Um,
reason why this sold so quickly is the director is Adam Egoyan,
yeah.
and Adam Egoyan directed several films, but most recently his earlier film, Exotica. Is it? Yeah,
Came to the
Exotica
Criterion. Yeah.
got a Criterion release, and that was
Yeah.
the film came out in 1994. This film came out earlier than that. This came out in when was it? 1989.
Yes.
Interesting. But yeah, uh, Steven had a much different, not a much different view,
Well,
but he didn't quite
it
vibe with it.
I did not vibe with this movie. I mean, look, I don't hate the movie, but
Mm,
it just wasn't for me. It felt very dry and just I just maybe I was in the wrong mood, but I just didn't really vibe with this movie. It didn't hold my attention. I found myself peering away from it, not really paying attention to it as much as I wanted to, which then caused me to almost like half watch the movie. You know what I mean? Like I finished the movie, but I was like, I don't even really know what I watched because it
y-
was just not. It just does not have. There's not a lot that you can hold on to with this movie. It's a challenging movie. Like it's for me at least. It was. It was something that felt like it. Um, it needed a certain mindset for, and I just didn't have the mindset for it that day. So and
yeah.
maybe people are listening to me say this and they're saying, God, he must be just stupid. But which is true. It's true. But it's just I'm like I said,
It's yeah, it's a
I'm not unrecommending this movie. I'm just
no, I
saying that
would
for
not.
me it didn't work
I
for
will
my
say
first
this:
viewing.
the movie. I was trying to explain this to Steven earlier, and I don't even know if I'm accurate or not. But just the way I viewed it is that the film feels purposely standoffish and purposely like there's an intention by the director to create some type of distance between the audience as and the film itself, because and that's the way in which the film is told. The general premise of this film is that there is this hotel employee who is obsessed with her coworker, who is a part-time actor, but he's also, once again, kind of a sex worker connection here. He gets kind of what's the word I'm looking for here? Lent out by his boss who runs the hotel to certain clientele, and it's and that's kind of part of the premise of the film. And the film is also like dealing with obsession and dealing with things like that. It's also kind of dealing with s- getting some type of human connection and also kind of maybe the delusion of human connection as well, because Lisa is so obsessed with this person that she rents his movies just to see him in the background. Like, he's like a background actor, he's got bit parts in movies, and she just rents these movies over and over and over again just to see him in it, so it's dealing with that almost vertigo level of obsession,
Yeah.
but he doesn't return that, um, yeah, feelings at all, you know what I mean? If anything, he doesn't even acknowledge her her feelings whatsoever. He constantly brushes her off, but yet she still pursues this. She still continues this. And also what this film does in depicting the world of sex working is it takes it in a different direction, that I think is way ahead of its time, and that's the idea of video talking, like
Well, I was
video
gonna say, yeah, there's a lot of
things.
video conferencing going on in
Yeah.
this movie, and in a way that I don't really understand how it's happening. It's like they're just talking to like shitty TVs.
Yeah, I
They
mean, it's not perfect, but it's ahead of its time in the sense, like,
it
you
is.
know, now video calling is normal,
We're
like,
doing
people
it right
FaceTime,
now.
we're doing it right
We're
now.
doing
Steve and I do it every single week for the
yeah,
last, like, several years,
yeah,
and it's so commonplace now, but this is the late '80s, like, that technology was
yeah.
far, far away from being anything relatively normal. I mean, cell phones weren't quite a
Weren't
thing,
really a thing yet.
really a
Yeah,
thing yet. They existed, but not in the sense like
for the
now.
rich, not for anybody
And
else.
it's but taking that form of sex work digitally and and putting it in a film in the late '80s, I think is really foreshadowing the way in which it would transpire to today's world, in the digital world, in the internet world, and all that kind of stuff. I thought that was fascinating, but the way in which this film depicts the scenario and the world in which it exists is rather unique. You know, the way Adam McGoyan, you know, it's very art house-ish, it's very avant-garde, it's very kind of almost stylized in a way, but also devoid of style too. Um, Not a lot of dialogue happening, so you just kinda have to feel what's going on, and if you don't really feel what's going on and you can't connect with it on that level, you may end up just checking out of the movie. For me, I saw his film Exotica before I'd seen this, so I kind of knew his style a little bit,
Yeah,
and that film is similar, but way more. You felt that power of that connection of that emotion way more in that film, than you do in this film. Maybe this film was a little bit of kind of a trial run of getting that style down, and then Exotica was, kind of a perfection on it. But I would not, deter people from seeing this film, especially if you're an Adam McGoyan fan and you want to get all of his movies. I would definitely dive into this. But diving into some other things that we got to see, I did get to see the documentary Vinyl Nation put out by ETR Media, and this is kind of exactly what you would expect. It's a movie about collecting vinyl and vinyl records, and it kind of goes through the passion behind that. If you've ever seen the movie High Fidelity and you wondered what that would look like in a and
yeah,
not what that passion would look like in a documentary form, that's what kind of this movie is. It's interviewing like big time like vinyl record collectors, people who worked in the industry, people who worked in stores for many decades, and just kind of showing like, the rise and fall and re-rise of the popularity of vinyl records. There's this one incredibly I thought powerful moment of the documentary where they ask this woman who's a collector, what's going to happen to your collection after you pass away? And this is a young woman. She's like same as our age, and the way in which she started crying, because of how much she loves her records and what would happen
yeah,
after she's gone. She said that she has like, certain instructions for her boyfriend and family and friends and what would happen. And it really hit me home, being a movie collector, what would happen with my collection after I pass away. And I have a plan for that as well, and it's a very real, interesting thing because I don't think a lot of people think of that. What would happen to your things after you pass away, especially things that you're passionate about. You
yeah.
know, um, yeah, I thought it was really, really kind of great in that regard. Very personal. I'm constantly fascinated with the history of vinyl records when it comes to its popularity. It's back now in a big bad way. Um, I've collected a little bit. I don't know if you ever got into collecting vinyl, Steven.
No, no. It's. I mean, it's cool. It's. I just decided that I can't add any other
Yeah.
things.
It's expensive now with these
Yeah,
these represses, these $30 to $40 records and
yeah.
special editions.
I used to have a nice little turntable set up to play records, and uh, you know, it just got to a point where I was like, I got to get rid of something. I can't keep this.
Yeah,
And I can't keep buying records. I mean, it's
I bought a few. I started a little vinyl, right? Just getting albums that I really loved, from
yeah,
bands that I really liked and stuff like that. Um, but I've never really gotten back into it because, like I said, expenses are what they are. But yeah, that's Vinyl Nation. I think I saw
Something in the dirt.
yes, Something in the Dirt yes, Something in the Dirt is streaming on Hulu right now, and Steven and I yesterday were wondering, why is this selling so fast to the point now where it's down to 233 standard editions left in stock, and I figured out why, Steven.
What happened?
The directors are Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead. Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead directed such films
The
as
Endless.
Endless and
Yeah,
Synchronic,
yeah.
films like that,
I
and
believe the Endless is Arrow put it out. I believe has it.
yes. And
Um,
Synchronic is another film that people really gravitated towards. And yeah, they're very much popular in the indie realm of movies.
yeah.
Also directed the movie Spring, which came out in 2014, which is another really great film. Yeah, they're really, really good directors who directed really good films. Um,
And
and that's why.
they're actors
And
as
they're
well.
actors. They actually acted in this movie.
They're very much the movie. I mean, it's really mostly them. And it's a weird movie. It's their neighbors John and Levy witnessed supernatural events in their Los Angeles apartment building. They realized documenting the paranormal could inject some fame and fortune into their wasted lives. That's how it's described here.
Nice.
And even deeper and darker rabbit hole, their friendship phrase as they uncover the dangers of the phenomena, the city, and each other.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
movie
weird
is
movie.
it's weird, unique, interesting, I would to
It's
some.
and
Um,
and the comedy's unique. You know, their back and forth is, I think, the driving force of the movie, really, because I think that they both really comically play off each other pretty well.
yeah,
Um,
it's interesting because the movie is it's like a regular fictional narrative, but within the film, there's a documentary being made, and then there's
yeah,
documentary footage within it. So you're kind of bouncing back and forth between all of these elements, like the actual events that are happening, the documenting of those things that are happening, and then the documentary itself commenting on those things from time to time. And
yeah.
it is a bit of a jumbled, messy situation when you come to that. Um, and the movie is what was the runtime on this film, Steven? It was kind of like
It
2 hours long.
Yeah, I was right around 2 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, it was right
Maybe a
around,
little probably a
probably a
little
little
longer than
less.
it needed to be. Yeah.
Yeah, a little less, maybe a little longer than it needed to be.
Yeah.
And I would say I like their other films more than after seeing this.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, this was an interesting kind of take for them, but I can understand why this is selling so fast because they're so popular or they're so well known. Because when I went on to Letterboxd and I saw the people I follow and like everybody had seen this movie already, and I was like, I missed out on something. Um, and apparently I did end up missing out on this movie because this movie came out last year. Yeah, 2022. And yeah, so it's a unique film, may not be for everyone. I would see their earlier films before I would see this film, um, just to kinda get in with their vibe and with their style and all that kind of stuff, or else
Yeah.
you may be a little knocked aback by this type of movie. But I think that's it in terms of things that we actually got to see firsthand. But some things
Yeah.
that do look interesting to us, Steven, the Full Moon trilogy. The reason
Yes.
why is because these films are directed by Joe Swanberg, and we talked a little bit about Joe Swanberg before because wasn't one of his films just released by a partner label?
Yeah, Uncle Kent 2 was released. Not the first Uncle Kent, but Uncle
No,
Kent 2 was released by one of these labels. I'm trying to remember. It might be Factory 25.
I mean it would be
Um,
appropriate if it was Factory 25.
yeah.
I think
Um,
I mentioned Joe Swanberg when we talked about Uncle Kent too. He directed films like, uh, Drinking Buddies,
yeah.
which, the movie notoriously had no script to it whatsoever and was pretty much entirely improv to a certain extent. Like, they had a rubric of what was going on, but they kind of, like, improved most of it. It's the movie that famously there's a drinking scene, like a drinking game scene between Anna Kendrick and, somebody else, and she notoriously actually got drunk while making the scene because she was actually drinking real alcohol while it was happening. I think it was maybe her and Jake Johnson or her and Ron Livingston, one of
I
the
guess
2.
Jake Johnson, yeah.
They're both in the movie, so it had to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
one
I
of them.
believe I remember hearing it was.
Yeah,
I
but
think
Drinking
yeah.
Buddies, look at the cast on this film: Olivia Wilde, Jake Johnson, Ron Livingston, Anna Kendrick, Jason Sudeikis, Ty West, the director, um, and Joe Swanberg's in it as like a cameo. He
And
actually had yeah,
yeah,
go
and Uncle Ken is Factory 25.
okay, all right.
So
I yeah, so that's pretty cool, and he also directed um some television series some television series as well as some other films and whatnot. But this is his early work. Um, yeah, the Silver Bullets, was it Art History and The Zone? I
yeah,
think are the three films. Yeah, this is
they're all
something that
right
I'm
around
looking
an
at.
hour long,
Yeah,
roughly.
there are currently. I mean, by the time this comes out, this information will be irrelevant. There are 12 left in terms of limited editions.
Yeah.
12 copies
I
left.
I decided to
It's still
take a chance
fast.
on this one. Yeah, I decided to take a chance on this one because I really liked Uncle Kent, the first Uncle Kent movie, because I did watch that one before to get prepared to talk about Uncle Kent 2 when we, and I really liked it. I thought it had a real kind of genuine sweetness to it, and like I liked and I'm hoping some of that is in this movie because these are earlier movies.
But yeah, these came
Um,
out after Uncle Kent, actually.
really?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
never
there's
mind. I shouldn't have bought this shit. No, I'm just
yeah.
kidding.
So
No,
there's, like, Uncle
yeah.
Kent, yeah, Silver Bullets came out the same year as Uncle Kent.
Okay, well then maybe that one will have what I'm looking for. No, I was
Yeah, and then
kidding.
Art History came out the same year as these all came out the same year, 2011. Um, yeah,
But
I
I'm
understand what you're
interested.
saying.
Yeah,
Uh,
the stories it look like they might have some interest to them. And other than that, I went ahead and bought Wounded Man. So,
yeah, Wounded Man definitely
The Great Bison looks interesting as well. It's a documentary.
oh, I
Um,
didn't know it was a documentary, yeah, The Great Basin. I wonder it sounds like a something you would see on National Geographic. Yeah,
yeah,
it's about rural Nevada. Yeah, the Great
yeah,
Basin. Uh, from the yeah, the Great Basin is a documentary feature that builds a complex panorama of rural Nevada in the western United States through a tapestry of characters whose work, live, and play there. Hmm, very
hmm.
interesting. That
I
does sound
believe.
very yeah. What else you got?
Well, I was gonna say I believe Red Cockroaches is also selling pretty fast. I don't know
Really?
why. I think so. Yeah, I think it's pretty getting
Saturn
pretty
Score?
down there as well.
Well, usually
But
Saturn Score, don't they do the shot on
it's
video
usually straight
stuff?
to video, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So this thing probably
Um,
hasn't seen a decent release ever.
Set
Uh,
against the backdrop of a futuristic New York City, besieged by, acid rain and, populated by mutant insects and flying cars. Bartender Adam okay, I'm not going to get that's a long
it's a
paragraph,
long description, but I can tell you
but
this:
that alone was enough for me to be kinda interested.
the movie was made for $2,000.
Okay,
Um,
wow.
yeah, and it was shot on a Canon GL1 camcorder.
Yeah, that I do need to look
This is
into that.
shot on video.
I need to look into this one because that does sound kinda cool.
Yeah, and
Um,
this is like early 2000s DV cam type of
yeah,
stuff. Something that all I guess special shout out because we did have the person from VHS Hit Fest.
yeah,
Justice Ninja Style is just a cool ass title. Just a
yeah.
cool
Oh,
ass
yeah.
title. I mean, and then like the back of the thing says "Blink and you die
Yeah,
in the dark." That's pretty
yeah.
dope right there.
Yeah, I believe a guy from VHS Hit Fest, Dan Kinham,
Hmm.
is his name. He was actually just on Disconnected this past week, so
Oh,
you guys
cool.
can. He might have talked about this. I didn't listen to the whole episode, but he might have talked about this title, possibly. I don't know.
Yeah, I do
Um,
want to say that I don't think Deaf Crocodile has put out a bad release yet. Um, so Deaf Crocodile is putting out Time of Roses, which
yeah,
I would yeah, I just the label name recognition alone leads me to believe that it's probably going to be at least worth a watch.
yeah,
But what's
and
interesting is that Agfa has 2 releases. Did you notice that?
I did notice that. Yeah,
The
um,
second one, The Zodiac Killer, this film came out in 1971. Um, for those of you relatively interested in the Zodiac, um, the Zodiac was still sending letters after 1971.
yeah.
So I don't know how much of a documentary like that will be accurate.
It's not like the Fincher movie, but
Well, thing is,
it's
like, even after the Fincher movie, they were doing more stuff with the Zodiac afterward. Like, I'm talking about investigation and things
sure,
like that. Obviously,
sure.
the Zodiac hadn't sent a letter in forever, but it's it's interesting because that's happened many times. It even happens now where either movies or documentaries are made about an event, a situation, kind of
That
while the
never
situation's
got
still going on.
that, or it's just never been resolved, which, is of course in the case of the Zodiac killer was never technically caught.
Right, but I'm making
So,
the case that, like, movies that come out while things are still happening oftentimes aren't going to be fully accurate because things
sure.
can change. Think
Haven't
of,
been completely investigated yet. Yeah.
remember Bong Joon-ho's Memories of Murder?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
um, it wasn't until, what, last couple of years they actually caught the person, responsible for those murders, from that movie, and that took, many, many years after. Uh, so it's kind of interesting that how that often that happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's I don't know if there's anything else we can say about the partner labels because we didn't get to see
Nothing
much.
else directly, just that, the Hourglass Santorum, just looking at some of the stills and things, it looked kinda cool. It's a Polish film, and it just really looked very, inventive and surreal looking, and kinda made me think of some of the, other, like the Zerograd. It kinda made me think
Yeah.
of that director's stuff. I mean, it might be. I believe there was a way to watch that film too. It might have been on YouTube, and it was a decent quality. So,
Oh, yes, you did tell me that
um,
was on there. It's a long film though, isn't it? Like 2 hours and 20 minutes?
yeah, it's long, but it might be worth watching on a visual level.
Yeah, and
So
I would say even, Bullets Over Summer, Connie, or Canny, I have no idea how to
I
say
think it's
that.
canny. Yeah,
Yeah, that label is very, very good.
yeah,
So I would take a flyer on that anytime. Yeah, their releases are really good. I think about, um, their releases sometimes because they Ode to Nothing specifically is such a haunting film,
yeah,
one of their
yeah.
earliest releases. Um, but yeah, I think that's
That's
pretty
it.
much it.
That is it for spy number 93 of Chasing Labels. We hope you enjoyed, and of course, once again, shout out to Adrian Martin for coming on the show. Please go check out his stuff. He has a website. I believe it was Adrian Martin slash something something something. I'm
Oh
sorry,
boy, that
Adrian.
is
I know that was
struggling.
terrible. That was
Oh,
terrible. I'm
bruh.
sorry, Adrian.
Maybe I
I
can look
was
it up, like, very quickly, so,
because I had it initially, and then
what happened did your tabs fall apart on you?
I've never ever said that I was a professional doing this.
That's very
So
true.
uh,
That is very, very true. Yeah, you've never
I've never said that what I do here would ever be right.
Ver
Um,
I mean, we do kind of wing it from time to time. Um, it's it's not yeah, it's not an exact science. Yeah, I think Adrian yeah, oh boy. The thing
well,
is I can't
I
find it.
can tell you
Yeah,
this: Adrian Martin's got his. If you go to his Wikipedia, you can find all the commentaries. Like he has a listing of all the commentaries that he's done. So you can get a good reference there for if you wanted to see if any of his work is in your collection already. But he does have a website that you can find that has all his essays and things on it. And I'm just having a hard time locating the proper name of that website.
I mean he does have a Twitter which is Adrian Martin 25.
Yeah,
And then I'm assuming his links will be on there.
yeah. But that is it. That is it for this episode. Andrew, where can you be found?
You can find me on Twitter at Capzilla06 as well as our YouTube channel Chasing Labels.
And you can find me on Facebook, Stephen Billings. You can find me over at the other Chasing Labels pages, whether it be our Twitter, Instagram, or my letterboxd at Stephen Billings. You can find the audio for the podcast on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and other places. Thanks again for listening, and hey, keep on watching them movies.
I know I will.